Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Burn the Corporate Fiction. I hope everyone is having an excellent day. Today we're going to be talking about, as I told you last time on my previous stream, the difference between law and equity and how they've inverted law and allowed equity usurp the law in order to place us in a permanent trust indenture, what they would like to be permanent trust indenture with AI. So for the first section of this stream, I'm going to be talking about boring law stuff. Well, I don't think it's boring, and I try to make it as entertaining as possible. It's absolutely essential to know these things if you want to fight these black-robed pirates and uniformed road pirates, right? You have to know this because that's how they're able to do what they do to you, is because you're ignorant of how they do it. And if you knew the law and how law actually works, and I don't mean their law, I'm not talking about UCC, there is only one law. There's only one law, and there's only one lawmaker. And up until about 150 years ago, 170 years ago approximately, this was common knowledge. You can read treaties from the 16, 17, 1800s on law. They know that man cannot make law. So man has to either create some sort of trust arrangement, right, be adjudicating purely property, or has to get consent by contract to bring you into any kind of jurisdiction other than the common law. So law is commonly referred to as common law when applied to society. Okay. This is based on, I've actually got some, before I get into what common law is based on, let me go ahead and say hi to those of you that are in the chat. I see we got a couple of you, Pat, Mojo. Okay. People are still showing up. So I did also, we're streaming to Facebook today and Rumble as well. So shortly we should have a pretty packed house. Backstage, I have Andrew. How you doing, Andrew?
Oh, better than ever today, man. How about yourself? This is great.
Very good, man. Doing very well.
Excited to be here. Love this conversation.
So Andrew's got some interesting information on you right now. He's going to start a channel, but he has a Facebook page right now. Same name that you see on the screen, Andrew Benjamin, right?
Benjamin.
And Benjamin. There you go. Sorry, I get it now. Benjamin. That's awesome. And he actually posts some very compelling and interesting things about what these road pirates do. So that's why I invited him on to the show this afternoon, and we're going to get into it. So we got Jerry, Dirty Ketchup just showed up. Good to see you guys. All right. So there is only one law. Okay. That's the common law is what it's referred to as, right? So let me see. I just pulled up The Heart of Blackstone. There it is. So this is a good book. Even so, the reason I say it was common knowledge that there is only one lawmaker and that man cannot make laws, because by the time you get to the 1900s, they had, through the central banking system, created such an extensive network of trust indenture via debt that they were quite quickly, they can't abolish law, but they can remove your access to it because trust can only be adjudicated in equity. And if that sounds like, a foreign language to you, by the time I'm done with the first half of this stream, it should make a lot more sense. So let's begin with what the actual only law is, right? So we're going to go, I'm getting ready to share the screen. This was an afterthought last second. So I didn't have it prepared, but everything else will be quick to go to. Here we go. So this is The Heart of Blackstone. This is a summary of Blackstone's commentaries done by another lawyer in 1905. And she has a very good understanding of what Blackstone was talking about. Now, for those of you who do not know what Blackstone's commentaries are, or is, well, it's are because there's 4 books. They are pretty much like a compendium of English common law, admiralty law, and all the laws of England from the time of William the Conqueror to just before the creation of the United States. This is important because it distinguishes the difference between each jurisdiction and how each jurisdiction arose out of the original jurisdiction, which is common law. And secondly, the colonists, just before the Revolution, all the colonists who were actually they had 2 books in their house. They had a Holy Bible and they had a Blackstone's commentaries. And that's why they were able to fight the British so effectively, even prior to the Revolution, because they knew the law. If you read the Declaration of Independence, it says right in there, Jefferson had penned, that one of the charges against the king was subjecting the colonists to foreign and unwarrantable jurisdiction. He was talking about Roman civil law. If you read Blackstone's commentaries, you'll see there's, for about the past 1,000 years, there has been a battle between the Roman style of trust law, turning everybody into property, and actual law, right? So you can look at one as counterfeit, that'd be the Roman civil law, and the other one is the one that we've had from time immemorial, going all the way back to Moses, right? And these two streams of law for the past 1,000 years have been in contention with one another for supremacy. And right now, unfortunately, Roman civil law is almost winning out, which is not law. It's pure equity, reducing everyone to trust property and then leaving it all up to the discretion of a judge. We're going to get into the difference between law and equity as well. So let me stop confusing you and take one thing at a time. We have the source of the common law from the heart of Blackstone. It says the common law is grounded upon the general customs of the realm, and it includes in it the law of nature, the law of God, and the principles and maxims of law. It is founded upon reason, and it is said to be the perfection of reason acquired by long study, observation, and experience, and refined by learned men in all ages. I want you to notice something. Nowhere in there does it say it was created by man. No, it has words like discovered, observation, right? Principles, maxims. These are all things that are observed, discovered and observed, and written about. So the law is not written. It's written about. And I can make this real simple for those of you that are incredulous about the topic. Yes, as Corbett says, Roman civil law is Roman slave law. Or as Jeff would say, another fellow jurist, he would say that ro means artificial and man, well, you know what that means. And so Roman is artificial men or straw men, right? So that's the etymology of Roman. But anyways, I'll make this common law thing real simple for people who are like, oh, that doesn't make sense. How can't man make? Well, it's easy, because for a crime to be committed at law, not Roman civil law, because in Rome, debt's a crime, right? Debt is a crime, and you can be taken into slavery or executed just for debt in Roman law. That's how that worked, right? Because you were property, your chattel. But at common law, in order for a crime to be committed, there has to be a victim, okay? And now, what are the crimes that can be committed, right? Or what are the actions that can be taken, right? You can have trespass, most common one, right? Assumpsit, replevin. There's a whole host of different common law actions. I've got them in a Word file we may go over in a little bit. But my point is every single one of those actions were not something that man said, you know what I think should be illegal or unlawful is this. No, all of those things were identified as unlawful because they violated the will of another living soul. And we didn't create that law. We didn't put that on our hearts to just know that that's wrong. And I'm not trying to get super up my own ass with preaching this, but I'm just pointing out the fact that what is actually law, right and wrong, we didn't make it. We do not make it. So man cannot create law. Man can observe it. Man can practice it. Man can create society according to it, as we had originally in this republic here, the United States, if you're watching from the United States. What man had endeavored to do with very dark forces, I personally think, because they couldn't have come up with it on its own, is to invert this. So what is man allowed to regulate? Well, man can regulate commerce within a society. This is how society is built, so that mankind can achieve the fullest expression of, our divine nature, I guess. We're not divine, but with that, the reflection of the divine that's within us through art, music, that sort of stuff. You have to have society, because if you're spending all your time trying to survive, you never have a society. Okay. And so there has to be some bit of codependency between one another that allows a society to be formed. As I say all the time, and if you're new to this channel, it might surprise you, but all the building of a society is taking trust relationships like bricks and building them atop of one another. But those trust relationships are not law. And that's what I'm trying to get to. So man can regulate commerce. Man can adjudicate property disputes. Okay? Property disputes. You can also adjudicate that at law, right? Or that's why man can adjudicate. But like equity can also adjudicate property disputes, is what I meant to say. But law, or man can, yes, I'm leading into what equity is. Okay, so man can adjudicate property disputes. And most importantly, man can create arrangements with his property to allow another man to use the property under certain conditions. Now, those conditions that are created are not law, but you need to be able to enforce them. So let's fast forward. We're not going to go into the super ancient time, but let's fast forward to as it pertains to us. And as trust relationships began to be used in the West after William the Conqueror in 1066 had conquered England, right, a new jurisdiction arose that is not law, because for the first 1,000 years after Christ, England lived under common law, and the law was unwritten and it was orally transmitted. England was self-governing. Okay, now there was some conquest. The Vikings came over, the Angles came over, and they all left their imprint and their mark on the culture, the customs and culture, but they still proceeded according to common law, right? Individual liberty was the concept, right? And voluntary participation in society, understanding that there's certain lines that a body politic could never cross, that being your right to property, unless you so chose to give that up, either by forfeit through crime or by agreement for, so anyways, the law wasn't written. Enter William the Conqueror. He comes over, he conquers England, okay? And then he lets them keep their common law. Of course he does. That's how the story's told by Blackstone. Of course he does, because he could never take it away. It's the original law. It's the original jurisdiction. But what he did do was he took their military law, their ability to mount a defense, and then he took off for a little bit. While he was gone, and I personally think he instigated it, Denmark came over, invaded England, kicked their ass, occupied for a little while, and then for whatever reason left. And that's why I think William the Conqueror did it. Now, when William the Conqueror came back, he said, so how'd that common law help you defend yourself? And they were like, well, it didn't allow us to mount a defense or anything. He's like, well, I have this new form of government, right, that will help you always be ready to fight a foreign invader, because that's what feudalism is. It's a military form of law. And he said, first, you have to register all your property in this doomsday book. Okay. There's the trap. There's the contract. There's the trick. So if you read Blackstone, prior to and we're going to read a little Blackstone, but I didn't pull up that particular section. I pulled up stuff on equity. If you read Blackstone, he'll even tell you that the English nobles, right, or the English had a allodial title prior to William the Conqueror, meaning allodial, for those of you who don't know, is a perfect title. Allodial title means that there is no superior ownership interest in the property that you have a allodial title of, that nobody can tell you how to use it. Nobody can charge you for the use of it. That means no property taxes, no regulations, none of that stuff, because that all manifests from the usury of property or being a usufruct, which we'll get to. So they had a allodial title, and he said, I need you to register all your property in this land survey book called the Doomsday Book. And they did. And what that did was it gave the crown the controlling interest in all the property. The property is no longer allodial. Then William took that property, now having the controlling interest, and just gifted it back to the people who registered it, right? But since he gifted it back under title. And now he could create rules and regulations regarding the use of that titled property. Okay. Now, those rules and regulations are not law, but that's how man figured out how to enforce his rules under the color of law, was by placing people in a trust. I hope this is starting to make sense now. And thus was feudalism born. So you had a descending cascade of ownership interest flowing downward from the king till you get to the peasants, who are tenants on the land, right? And they just have the right of use, and they pay their lord, that lord pays his lord, that lord pays his lord, and it ultimately trickles all the way back up to the king. And they all have to use and act accordingly to the king on that property, because not because he's king, because if you read in the Bible from a long time ago, like King Ahab, he couldn't tell his subjects what to do with their property or tell them what to do on their property, right? So it's not because he's king he could tell them what to do and how to use the property. It's because he tricked them into giving him superior interest in the property. So the word register, which is the word I used, and that's what they did in the Doomsday Book, the word register comes from the Latin regnatum, which means to be governed or to govern, right? Everything with reg in it is some variation of govern, okay? And most especially registration, all right? So when you register something, you give the controlling interest of it over to whomever you register with. This includes your children when you apply for a birth certificate and register the birth certificate, right? Your automobile becomes a motor vehicle, right? And I'll get into why that is in just a little bit. But before we get to that, so now you had primarily, you still had common law, but common law was dying out. This is one of the reasons that, well, not dying out, but being put into disuse is how Blackstone puts it, because they could never get rid of common law, like I said, because everything became increasingly about trust relationships. So much so that chancery, which was what equity was called at that time, there's very little difference between chancery and equity. It's so insignificant that it doesn't even really bear explaining, because it just has to do with holding the conscience of the king, right? But it's all the same. And equity is not law. So if we look at, let me stop sharing this real quick. We look at Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, right? And I'm going to share that real quick. I should just share the window anyway. All right, Article 3, Section 2. Let's see if we can zoom in on this real quick. Okay, the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity. You hear that word a lot lately, right? Equity. Why do you think they made a distinction between law and equity in the Constitution? And what do you think they're talking about when they talk about law? There's only one law, and the Constitution, this compact, this contract that created the trust of government, both state and federal, was and had to be and was made at common law. And so when they're talking about law, that is the only law. Notice that it's capitalized. So is equity. Equity is like the sister of law, who's not law, but is there to supplement the deficiencies of law, especially when you have a society built on trust relationships. And that's why. So let's get back into that. So equity is not law. Equity deals with fictional relationships and fictional characters, contracts, trust arrangements. Essentially, anything in fiction is what equity is primarily for. You can adjudicate property disputes but it's essentially for adjudicating trust. There's really no other way to put it. That's what equity really became put into use for, and what it's still used for, why it's taken over everything to this day. So my dad joined us, Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind. How are you doing, man?
I'm here, man. I was in there contorting and trying to keep my back from hurting, but yeah, now I'm a little better if I keep my leg crossed right. So how y'all doing?
I'm doing very well, man. I feel bad for you. He's dealing with some back issues, so yeah.
Oh, my blood pressure thing too. So we have one of those ones you can just put it on and connect it, and it does your blood pressure, checks it.
Right.
Leanne says, "Let me get my manual cuff out too. I want to check it with that too right after you do it the next time." So she got that out, and that little ball that you squeeze, the thing's all hard now. It thing can't be no more than 20 years old, right? And it's all hard. It won't squeeze or nothing like that. And so probably the rest of the cuff's no good either. And it's first thing I thought of was the seals on the space station. It's like, this thing isn't as old as the space station, and I don't believe anybody's gone to changing any seals up there.
That's a good point, actually. That's a very good point. I'm sure the audience will appreciate that, actually. So what I was in the middle of explaining is the boring stuff real quick, because we want to get to the present state of affairs, but I want people to have an accurate.
No fatties in the Pentagon no more. No more fatties. No more fatties.
That's what's important right there. Let me tell you. Thank God they're doing that.
That the enemy's here. The enemy's here. You see, that's the thing. That's what
we're going to get.
Yeah. Said.
Well, they are here. They're in the government, and it's the corporate state. That's the enemy. That's always been the enemy. It's always will be the enemy. It's the corporate state. So
you can identify them by the Star of Moloch.
That's yeah, absolutely ancient Babylonian symbol for sure.
Right back.
All right. Yeah, so I just want to build this up and we'll get to the current events, I promise. I know this can be boring for some people. I hope you guys really do try to take this information in because it's how they're enslaving you. So back to what I was saying, trust or equity is primarily for the adjudication of trusts. Okay. And now because it's for the adjudication of fiction, the decisions in equity are left entirely to the discretion of the judge. Why? He's a man, right? He's not supposed to be adjudicating living souls or making law, which is what he's doing up there on the bench by deciding what's right or by deciding, whether or not this applies, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'll tell you why, because he's not supposed to be adjudicating living souls. He's supposed to be adjudicating fictions and property disputes. And so, of course, it could be left up to his conscience because judges are chosen to be judges, supposedly, though we know it's not true, for their wisdom and knowledge of the law, which none of the judges not none of them, but most of the judges, especially low level that you guys come across, do not know the stuff I'm teaching you today. And
a lot of them don't even have to pass the bar.
Yeah, I know, that's insane. But at the same time, it's not, because the bar is exactly that. It's a bar. And originally in this country, there wasn't even a bar association in this country until the 1840s. And 1867 was when they instituted the National Bar Association. Okay, so you have 100 years this country existed without those fucking pirates, and the law still existed. Right. So that's the whole thing. So the reason that they're in practice now and you have to have a license is because everything has become Roman civil law, aka trust law. It's basically one big field of equity without law at all. And I'm going to show you how this is the case. So again, it's up to the discretion of the judge because he's not supposed to be adjudicating living souls. He's supposed to be deciding fictitious situations. So it could be left to his discretion. Let's jump over to Blackstone's commentaries real quick, okay? So, nope, we're not going to get into that right now. So it says equity here. We'll just get to the point of it. And on the other hand, the liberty of considering all cases in an equitable light must not be indulged too far, saying by trying to bring everything over to equity because you've made a massive national trust. Should not be indulged too far, lest thereby we destroy all law and leave the decision of every question entirely in the breast of a judge. And law without equity, though hard and disagreeable, like, yeah, you can't have fictional scenarios of use, aka trusts, right? Law won't recognize that. Though hard and disagreeable, is much more desirable for the public good than equity without law, which would make every judge a legislator and introduce most infinite confusion, as there would then be almost as many different rules of action laid down in our courts as there are differences of capacity and sentiment in the human mind. Okay, so we're going to hop over here to Bouvier's Law Dictionary, letter D, discretion in practice, meaning law. When it is said that something is left to the discretion of a judge, it signifies that he ought to decide according to the rules of equity and the nature of circumstances, right? Which can only happen in equity. So when something's left to the discretion of a judge, that can only happen in equity. Bench trials can only happen in equity. DUIs can only be adjudicated in equity because it's a pre-crime, right? So you see where we're going with this AI thing, how they're trying to implement Gideon and these pre-crime behavioral things. They could only do that if they had buried law under equity. They can't get rid of law, but they have to bar your access to it and make essentially a worldwide trust so that there is no one left that should have access to law. This is Satan, okay? If God created law, who do you think came up with this? So right here, the discretion of a judge is said to be the law of tyrants. It is always unknown. It is different in different men. It is casual and depends upon the constitution, temper, and passion. In the best, it is oftentimes capriciousness. In the worst, it is every vice, folly, and passion to which human nature is liable. Period. Okay? So now you see why the Bar Association wants everything to be equity so bad, right? So there's actually another little piece of information. There's, hold on, I should have had this prepared. I didn't think about it, though. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. It's called, it's a law review, an international law review. There it is. Let's see if I can just pull it over here real quick. There we go. Did it pop up? Cool. So this is an international law review called Equity and Admiralty, a Turbulent Path to Manifest Destiny. There you go, right? And it's written by Northwestern Journal of International Law and Business. And you'll see right here, they tell you that effective in 1966, they unified civil and admiralty procedure, right? Civil law being Roman law. Anytime you see the word civil law, they're talking about Roman civil law. That means they've somehow created a national trust and pulled the entire citizenry into it as trustees. Okay, that's what Roman civil law is, an admiralty procedure. And then they can also, once they've networked that efficiently between nations across seas, they can bring admiralty inland with that, right? So anyways, and then in 1938, he tells you they abolished the distinction between actions at law and suits in equity. Again, they could only do that if they created a national trust and pulled everyone in, not as creators of the trust, but as creatures of it. That's what the 14th Amendment is. The 14th Amendment created, or at least recognized for the first time, a citizen of the United States as distinct from that of the states. That is Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. And I'm going to show you some stuff to reiterate my point in a little bit about the 14th Amendment. We're not quite that far yet, okay? So anyways, equity, we went through that, equity. Okay, so how do you end up in a trust, right? It's all about, so the relationship to your property, here, let's bring this down for a second. Your relationship to your property determines the jurisdiction you're under, okay? All your rights are derived from property except for the very first right, the right to property, which was gifted to you in trust by the creator. And then everything else comes from your relationship with your property and the contracts that you've made with it. If you have absolute ownership, then the only law you're subject to is common law, which is, of course, based on God's law as applied to society. Now, there are ways that the law recognizes that you no longer have lawful right to your property, including, and so, yeah, that's where we're going to go with this. We're going to go to, real quick, we're going to go to a treatise. Okay. This is profound. And I know it's boring, guys. I'm almost through it, and then we'll get to the juicy stuff. Okay. It's just so necessary that this get recorded in order so you guys understand. I'm going to get to comments and stuff too. I'm just, when I get like in this situation, I got to keep the flow going.
Keep the pace.
So right here, Treatise on the American Law of Administration. Okay. This is, because this is what's called when somebody else has reduced you to the trustee of your own estate, it's called being under administration. Administration only ever has to do with trusts. Even the creation and formulation of a government in the first place is a creation of a trust. But when you're the grantor or the creator and you specifically set out the limits of that trust, right, that trust cannot then turn around and take control of you. That's why they had to create their own subservient creature called the United States citizen in order to do it, right? And then act like the people don't exist anymore. So this is interesting. It says, my property is that which is mine. Okay, you see it starts right there. Oops, not right there. Right there. That only is mine, which I acquire, hold, and dispose of by my will. By my will. It is my will which determines the acquisition of a thing, whether by me originally or by reducing to possession and thus making my property that which was no one's property before. So everyone has the right to acquire property for their own benefit and survival. That is a God-given right. And you will something to become your property. That's that God-given, that divine spark in you to will. That's something that the animals don't necessarily have, that free will, right? But you do. And even according to the Bible, the angels don't have, but you do, right? Free will. So you will something to become your property. And your choice of property, the way in which you labor to acquire it, make that an extension or a realization of your will. All of your property is a realization of your free will. So when someone else has the controlling interest of your property, they control your will. We'll get into that. So he goes down, he says, or I can contract with somebody and my will concurs with that of its former owner, it becomes mine, right? That's a contract. And so he says, he goes through about the difference between like abandonment or just leaving something there, right? And he says, that which is mine is thus part of my personality, of me, insofar as its end and purpose of existence is a satisfaction, the realization of my will, and to serve it for its purposes as my bodily limbs serve me. Will, then, is the essence of property. Without it, there is none. Hence, that from which I have withdrawn my will, which I have abandoned, ceases to be my property, and becomes, as we have seen, res nullius, which means, nullified property. The appropriation of which by another is no violation of my right. So you see what he's saying here is that the will is the essence of property. It's so important. So the one more thing I want to point out here is that he says right here, for the sphere of the law, all laws, for those of you who are like, oh, you don't have to know about God to study law. Yeah, you do. That's why these lawyers suck so bad, these attorneys, because they're just focused on the commercial aspect of it, right? He says, for the sphere of the law is the spiritual. It operates upon and through the will alone. All law, everything has to do with will. Everything, contract law, obviously, which is part of common law. It's the common law of contracts, not their UCC, which is like just a total chimera and bastardization of the common law of contracts, very loosely rooted in it because it has to be. But everything, all of it has to do with will. Okay. Now, why do I bring this up? Because historically, there's only been two ways you can come under administration. That is, if you willingly come under administration, right, by being someone who's poor and seeking benefits. When you see, we'll get into that too, or you're incompetent. Why? Because you are presumed to have no capacity to exercise free will. This is ancient stuff, guys, right? Ancient understanding. You're considered to not have the capacity to exercise free will, whether you're a pauper, an infant, not of age, right, or an incompetent. You're presumed to not be able to exercise free will. And this goes back to the Magna Carta even. So what happened was, this is part of the law, never had to be written down. Well, the priest class started abusing it to screw the barons' heirs out of their inheritance, right? So if you die without a will and your heir is not of age, it's called dying intestate. And intestate estates come under the administration of the governing authority. There's that word, administer. That means they can dictate how the property is used, who uses it, right? Charge a fee for the use of it, take their own fee for administering it, and all that. So finally, that's why they cornered King John and had him sign the Magna Carta. And you'll notice from the very beginning of it, says, if any earl, baron, or other person that holds lands directly to the crown for military service shall die, and at his death his heir, right? Go down to this one. But if the heir is under age and a ward, when he comes of age, he shall have his inheritance without fee. See, the whole thing is about property and the descent of property, inheritance of property, and the administration of property. That's what the Magna Carta is about. So that's the very reason, because they've taken everyone under administration, that when you jump to the compiled laws of the state of Michigan, 1929, before the Constitution, their source of jurisdictional authority, if the damn thing ever loads, you'll notice, come on, you piece of garbage. Got a lot of stuff open, so bear with me. There. All right. So the very first source of jurisdictional authority is the Magna Carta, before the Declaration of Independence and before the Constitution. Do you know why that is? Because when you go back to the Magna Carta, this infected common law with trust law. It gave a common law, what's the word I'm looking for? Prescription for taking someone under administration. That's why. So look, because you'll go right here. It says, the guardian of the land of an heir who is under age shall take from it only reasonable revenues, customary dues, and feudal services, right? For so long as the guardian has guardianship of such land, he shall maintain the houses, parks, fishes, preserves, ponds, mills, and everything else pertaining to it. So that's the whole thing about, you automatically enter into a trust as the beneficiary in this sense, but without the beneficiary, contrary to what people think, has no power. You are only entitled to compel the trust to give you what your benefit is. That's it. And in our instance, you don't want that benefit, because that's why they call it corrections. Going to jail is a benefit. Believe it or not. I'll show you something crazy. In fact, the only way they can appropriate money from the mortgage of our estates is everything has to be done under the guise of for our benefit. So even the frickin' space program, dude, the space program is under Title 42, Public Health and Welfare. Look at this. Congressional Declaration of Policy and Purpose, or is it right here, National Space Program under Public Health and Welfare. What the fuck? Right? Look, Congress declares that the general welfare of the United States, right? And then you go down here, and of course, Congress declares the general welfare of the United States. See, they have to use that language to justify borrowing money against your sweat equity as an indenture. They have to justify it by saying it's for the benefit. Now it should make sense why we have all these nonprofits and NGOs that are bilking the federal budget, state budgets, because that's how these bastards that run the system siphon public funds into private pockets, because those same NGOs and nonprofits and all that stuff, these politicians are on the boards of, or they're the president of, and just all sorts of stuff, right? So this is an old tactic too. This is nothing new. That's why they think everyone's a bunch of idiots, because they still haven't picked up on it. It's been like 1,000 years. So the Magna Carta talks about it, and then even right at the beginning of the Organics Act, the ordinance, the Northwest Ordinance. So it's the ordinance for the territory northwest of the River Ohio. This is before Michigan and Ohio and Indiana and all that became a state. This is what it was called. It's called the Northwest Territory. Then 1826, Michigan became its own territory. And I'm going to show you guys that in a moment too. But notice how it starts, right? It says, be it ordained by the authority aforesaid that the estates, there's that word estates, both of resident and non-resident proprietors in the said territory, dying intestate, shall descend to and be distributed among their children. Notice that's the first fucking thing they bring up.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing too with Michigan is people don't realize it. We found shit up in Sault Ste. Marie that was dating back to the 1600s.
Yeah,
building and shit like that, dating back to the 1600s. There was a lot of commerce. There was all kinds of shit going on in those areas that people think were just like wilderness. Pirates on the Great Lakes, for shit's sake, man. This is no shit. The pirates were even using the Great Lakes and some of those islands out there to stash their shit.
Yep, absolutely. Well, they moved inland. That's exactly what happened. Is the pirates moved in. The people today that are running the court systems and the banking system are the pirates of yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, they are. Maybe not as early as you're talking about, but 1600s, yeah. 1500s, yeah. They were like the black budget ops for the merchants. That's what pirates were. They didn't just exist organically and rove the sea. They just like today, they were false flag dialectic tools,
Mm-hmm.
So notice that's how important this is. It goes right into inheritance and all that, because that right there, death is their doorway into taking control of your property. Always is. That's why there always has to be a last will, so that the continuity of the descent of property isn't broken, that there's one continuous will from the first patriarch of the family to the one that exists now. There's one continuous will to hold and acquire the property that the family now holds. As soon as that will is broken, the court is allowed to step in and take the estate under administration. Okay. Now, the other way, aside from this, is being a pauper. So let's jump back to Blackstone, and I'm almost done. I'm almost done with this section of it, but let's jump back to Blackstone. It says, man, considered as a creature, must necessarily be subject to the laws of his creator, for he is entirely a dependent being. This comes from observance of the law in divine revelation. The whole poor laws and settlement acts, your birth certificate comes from this observation. Okay. It was originally a settlement certificate. So because it says a being independent of any other outside of the creator, because nobody can be independent of the creator. That's why we're all subject to the creator's laws, right? But a being independent of any other, like any other man or woman, right, has no rule to pursue but such as he prescribes to himself, which is common law. Okay. but a state of dependence will inevitably oblige the inferior to take the will of him on whom he depends as the rule of his conduct. Not indeed in every particular, but in all those points wherein his dependence consists. Well, this is the doorway that they started using, especially scumbag states like mine here in Michigan, started using immediately after they were formed to start usurping the sovereignty of its citizenry, of its people. And I'll show you. So paupers, this they did in England. They were just reenacting the playbook they already did in England. Now, this is a WordPress somebody made, but it's a good collection of stuff that summarizes the evolution of the poor laws in England. And what they did originally was they cordoned off all the forests and they made it illegal for people living in the forest or in these little villages to use the land to survive, like hunt, fish, stuff like that. They did this so that they could force everyone into these cities and out of the woods and off the farms, and they forced them into the cities. Well, of course, it worked, but they came in as paupers. When they came in as paupers, they started issuing them settlement certificates. And then, of course, with all the stuff they were getting from all these colonization exploits, this also ties into the Catholic Church and the papal bulls, right? Yeah, that's what this all is a big realization of unum sanctum. That's what this is, a worldwide trust to be adjudicated in equity at the discretion of man and not God. So, they were getting so when the Pope did Dum Diversus, right, the doctrine of discovery, he said, go forth and conquer the evil, the heathen lands, and bring glory to the church. And of course, what he really meant was take their shit and give it some of it to me and give it, spread it out amongst yourself. That's what we're doing here. And so you'll notice at the same time that this happened, or just after, all these companies started to be created. So I think that, don't quote me on this, I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the 1500s when Dum Diversus was instituted. And then right there at 1600 on the dot, you have the creation of the East India Trading Company. And what was its purpose? Well, these merchants in London, which has always been controlled by Rome, were tasked with going out and carrying out the doctrine of discovery. And so a bunch of merchants got together, invested, and created a company like the Virginia Company or the East India Trading Company, the Hudson Bay Company, and all that. Well, these ended up becoming the corporations that form our governments. East India, the United States used to be the East India Trading Company. You can look at the flag. Look at the flag. I'll show you. Look, East India Trading Company flag. There it is.
Yep.
That's it. I want to click on it. There. Right there. That's it. Does that look familiar? It should. Yeah. So Hudson Bay became Canada, so on and so forth. So the purpose of these were to work in tandem with the banking systems to eventually pull everyone under them in a national trust into this corporation as a franchise of the corporation. And then the bank would bankrupt the corporation, which by operation of law would immediately place you in a trust as a pauper. Immediately. You're dead to the law. Boom, just like that. So that's what this whole plan was. They came here, they gave everyone their sovereignty just so that their corporations could take it back. See, because those corporations before, when it was East India Trading Company or Hudson Bay, they couldn't take the king's sovereignty. So they had to do this elaborate plan where they gave the people their sovereignty and then allowed their corporations to usurp that sovereignty. You see what I'm saying? In order to be able to act autonomously and make decisions with the central bank. So the central bank could then bankrupt them, place them into a trust, and then the Pope comes around and funds all the public charitable trusts that back the indenture, and that's where we're at right now. I just brought you up to speed there. So let's get here. This right here is the poor laws, right? And I want to show you one specific sentence out of here. Is, let me see, if a person right here, just to show you, this is how they started taking people under administration. If a person entered a parish, this is from 1662, in which he or she did not have an official settlement and seemed likely to become chargeable to the new parish, then an examination would be made by the justice or parish overseers. And I suppose I should add this real quick, okay? Real fast, because I got about 12 minutes to get through this first part, and then we're going to get on to the second part, open discussion and stuff. But anyways, if a person or when we became independent, we did not create a new law. In fact, no nation just creates a new law. The newest law, or the newest forms of government that were created recently, are fascism and communism. However, they're both rooted still in law. It's just everyone gets taken under administration and placed in trust and has no access to the law. But everything has to start out in the law. It's so important to realize that. And so we didn't obviously invent a new law when we became independent. We still continued using the existing common law, as well as the advancements and implementations in administration, which is outside of law, that England had made throughout the century since the Magna Carta, made it permanently a part of the English law. Now, administration is not law, but law recognizes it and allows it because it's considered charitable and beneficial. Administration only occurs when someone has no free will. So it's considered being protective and helping them, right? Well, the devil uses it to enslave you. So right here, you see this. If any person entered a new parish in which he or she did not have an official settlement and seemed likely to become chargeable to the new parish, then an examination would be made by the justices or parish overseers. We're going to hop over here to the laws of the territories of Michigan, 1826, okay, page 405. That if any overseer of the poor of any township shall have reason to believe that any stranger who shall have come to reside in such township and who shall not have obtained a legal settlement therein. Why are we doing this here already? 1826, because that was the fucking plan. Right? A legal settlement therein is likely to become chargeable to such township, exact same language. Such overseer shall apply to any two justices of the peace of such township or of any county in which such person shall live. And see where that comes from, the two, right, to two justices of the peace. That goes all the way back to the Magna Carta, right? So it says that, where is it at? It says that, debtor lacks rent. Hold on. Says that if oh no, it's up here actually. There it is. It says that he shall do that if we have given the guardianship of the land to a sheriff or to any person answerable to us for the revenues, and he commits destruction or damage, we will exact compensation from him, and the land shall be entrusted to two worthy and prudent men of the same fee. Fee meaning the same office of trust or profit. That's what a fee. The fee is a charge. The fee is an obligation that has been entrusted to somebody to carry out that creates a trust. Like what these people, what that means, the overseers of the poor, they're holding a trust position, and that is their fee, is being overseers of the poor, and they've been charged with overseeing the poor. Right. So the two worthy, prudent men of the same fee. Well, guess who the two prudent and worthy men are now? So here in 1826, they were the two justices of the peace. Okay. So right there, it says, overseer shall apply to any two justices of the peace, right, of any such township. And then the justice holds an office of trust. Okay. Whereas the overseers of the poor, if I'm not mistaken, holds an office of profit, because that's a welfare office. And see the whole concept behind welfare. Well, before I get into that, the two worthy men now are the district attorney and the judge, the DA and the judge. That's the two worthy men now. And you've committed destruction or damage to the property that you hold in trust, and you're subject to them for revenue, including your body. And you've caused destruction or damage. They're allowed to hand your body over to two worthy men of that fee, meaning the judge and the prosecutor, the DA. That's what's going on here. They're using the same law. So people who say they don't use the law, yes, they do. They have committed fraud, coercion, collusion, misrepresentation of material facts. So it's all void, but they are trying to use the law and make it look like they're following it as closely as they can without causing too much fraud, because they don't want it to be able to be undone. But it's coming undone because they committed too much fraud. So without further, without going too much into that, the thing with welfare is where I was going. The poor laws and the settlement acts and stuff. The concept behind it goes back to this fundamental maxim of law, where it says that a state of dependence will inevitably oblige the inferior to take the will on whom he depends as the rule of his conduct, right? Of him on whom he depends. So when you go and apply for benefits, and you'll notice the first thing after the bankruptcy, the New Deal with the welfare programs, and then it's just been current expansion of welfare because you're a pauper. Okay. And when you go accept benefits, if you're going saying, I need help to live, I can't survive on my own estate, right? What you're saying is I'm incompetent. And so by operation of law, they're allowed to take you under administration, and then they can go and work you or tell you what to do to make you profitable. And then they take a snippet of the profit that they've generated from you, and they give it to you in the form of a benefit, housing, food, whatever. Right. But then they keep like 33% themselves. Yes, 33. Exactly. 33%. And that's the fee for administration. And that's why it's called an office of profit. There's actually this, let's see if I can pull this up real quick. There's a very good example. And let's say right here, and it is in Avalon Project. This is the 1776 Pennsylvania Constitution, the original one. You look at section 36, and it says, as every free man to preserve his independence, if without sufficient estate, ought to have some profession, calling, trade, or farm, whereby he may honestly subsist, there can be no necessity nor use in establishing offices of profit, which are welfare offices. The usual effects are dependence and servility unbecoming free men, right? That's what he's talking about, being poor. If you want to be free, you can't be poor. That's how you put that simple, right? Like if you want to be free, or you can be poor and you can be free, but you can't be unable to survive on your own estate. So what that means, or on your profession or calling. And this is why they're doing what they're doing to the homeless right now, because it's actually is unlawful to be homeless. You're supposed to have, which I know is, it's like, oh, right. But, and participate in society. But see, here's the thing, the homeless, if they can live on their own, see, that's where it's messed up. It's actually, they foster that situation because the homeless are supposed to be able to go into the forests and the woods and provide for themselves. So there's another way that they're violating the law and causing this to be undone, is like you have the right to forage for food and survive on your own. And so what this is actually saying is, don't come to us for help and you can keep your independence. And that's ultimately the crux of it, right? That is the crux of it. Don't come to us for help and you can keep your independence. Okay. So let's fast forward this real quick, because I got about just a couple of minutes and then we got to get to the current events. So what they've done, right, is you went from this where everyone's free, right? They've started taking as many estates under administration, especially in the northern states, as they possibly could. Okay. In preparation for what they knew was coming, which was going to be the 14th Amendment. But first they needed a civil war. And this is why, Michigan and states like Michigan were complicit in setting the system up. At the very same time that the 14th Amendment, or the Civil Rights Act that created the United States citizen and eventually became the 14th Amendment, was ratified or was enacted, Michigan began its birth registration and voter registration programs so that it could quietly funnel its citizenry into the United States citizenship. Okay. But beyond that, all states are confederate. Confederacy is a type of union, and I'm going to prove it to you. I always bring the receipts. So confederacy is a type of union, and a confederacy is opposed to a corporate union, which we are now. They're opposites. In fact, before I even get into this,
hey Ryan, it's the arrows in the eagle's claw. It's the arrows. There's 13 arrows. There's separate arrows, but together they represent strength. It's unity of this, but still separate arrows.
That's actually, it's a good catch. That's exactly what that is. Yeah. Confederation. So right here, this is Penn Hollow versus Stone's Administrators, which I see a lot of you on Facebook post as if it says the government is an artificial construct of the mind. I wish it said that, but nowhere in this does this have anything to do with the government being an artificial construct. This is part of the psyops that, like, David Lester Straight and Anna von Reitz and them, they all give you case sightings. You guys never research them for yourselves. and then you share them as if they're fact, or worse, you try to use them again in court, and they laugh at you because you look like an idiot. This has nothing to do with the government is an artificial construct of the mind, and that is a true statement, what you guys are passing around, but it's definitely not in a court case that they're going to have preserved, on the record for posterity. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because Confederate. So right here it says, and this is from 1795, but wherever an alliance is not corporate but confederate, the sovereignty resides in each state. Okay. And says, now the state retained all powers which she did not expressly surrender to the Union. A state cannot cease to be sovereign without its own act, nor can sovereignty be asserted but upon a clear title, which is one reason why Congress was never given the authority to delegate the authority to make currency to a third party, because how could we maintain our national sovereignty? Sovereignty can only be asserted upon a clear title. But anyways, that's not why I'm pointing this out. I'm pointing this out as Confederate Union is in contradistinction to a corporate union. Okay. So whenever an alliance is not corporate, but confederate, sovereignty resides within the state. So prior to the Civil War, we'll hop over here to this is 1846 Michigan revised statutes. And I thought I just had this pulled up. Why is it got to load again? It's stupid. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and pull it up. Oh, they don't want me to prove that Michigan's actually a Confederate state, that they're all Confederate states. Look at this bullshit right now. So what it says is that Michigan is solicitous to give to her sister state, or prove to her sister states, her desire to promote the peace and tranquility of the Confederacy, is what it says. And it's for some reason not wanting to load. This loads no problem. This loads no problem. This, not so much. So let's do that. Let's refresh.
5 years.
What a piece of garbage. Come on. There it is. Okay. So right here, actually, I really appreciate this site, because if it wasn't for the site, this stuff would probably be lost in obscurity. But so let me do Control Plus, and we're going to go down. I don't know if you can't highlight on this because it's a photocopy, but if you can see my cursor here, right? Right here, it says the people of the said state are solicitous to give to her sister states and to the world unequivocal proof of her desire to promote the tranquility and harmony of the Confederacy. Period. So they're all Confederate states. What the Civil War was actually was a war on our sovereignty by the foreign corporation known as the United States, in order to institute the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment is the linchpin. So I'm going to fast forward through the rest of this. First, here's where Companies House gov.uk right here. So I think, bam. Oh, okay. Well, I already have it. Unfortunately for them, I already have it pulled up on another tab. So whatever. It is right here. So this is Companies House gov.uk. Okay. The United States of America has one beneficial owner, which I'm imagining is probably the Pope or someone within that organization, and it's not the people. 2 active statements. Okay. And beneficial owner shows you that the whole nation is in a trust right now. That's what that shows you. That's why I think it's the Pope. And the government, it's called the Government of the United States of America. It's on, guess what? 33-9 Elms Lane. Like it took 33 hours to find the shooter, right? And it's not even the shooter, and it's always 33. It was notified on the 3rd of July, which used to actually say 4th. I don't know how that changed. Maybe it's a Mandela, but it's been changed for some time. It's the 3rd of July, 1776. Okay.
Oh, wait a second. Well, wait a second. Originally it was the 3rd. Then it moved to the 2nd, and now it's back to the 3rd now?
Yeah, you might be right about that, actually. Yeah, it was originally the 3rd. Yeah, it's back to the 3rd now. And so But anyways, point is it's registered with the Companies House, but this doesn't mean it's under the English government. It's not. It's under the London government, which is under the Holy See, which always has been. It's under the little financial district of London that is sovereign. So let's prove to you guys real quick about the 14th Amendment, and then we'll get to current events. So I'm going to share this window right here. Let me pull this one up. Hendrick v. Maryland. Yeah, this is the one I need I've got everything pulled up to show the fallacy of the 14th Amendment. So we'll start with Black's Law, 4th edition. And sorry if I haven't been getting to the comments on this stream because I've been pontificating, but you have to keep a fluid stream of thought to tie all these seemingly unrelated things together into a stream of events that actually took place in a coordinated fashion to enslave you. So the 14th Amendment, it became part of the Organic Law July 28, 1868, and its importance entitles it to special mention. It creates, or at least recognizes for the first time, a citizenship of the United States as distinct from that of the states. Now, who was it made for? The newly freed slaves. Newly freed slaves couldn't exercise common law rights under the law of the land because they were what? Dependent. They were property also. They were private property that was never actually lawfully, but abolished slavery. So that's a great thing, right? But they did not know how to survive on their own. So they would immediately come under administration again to private hands. So the United States seen an opportunity and was like, well, actually they had foreseen this opportunity. I think that was one of the reasons for slavery in the first place. Or like here, we'll grant them privileges and immunities, which are not rights. Okay. Actually, the settlement certificate itself is the very first privilege. It's the right to live and work, or it's the privilege of living and working somewhere with the protection of your patron, your guardian. And that's what the settlement certificates were always originally, and they're considered a privilege. And it opens the door for privileges, not rights. But by operation of law, you give up your autonomy and your sovereignty when you join this. So why would we become 14th Amendment citizens? It didn't offer us anything we already had. In fact, it offered us less than we had. We would lose. We would exchange our unalienable rights for privileges and immunities. Well, that's why many people actually didn't become United States citizens. So you have here, this is McDonald v. State case, Indiana Supreme Court from 1883, May 15th. Okay. It's 90 Indiana 320. If you want to cite it, look it up. You can find it on Harvard Case Law Access Project or here on Court Listener. But you go down here, basically what it was, this guy appealed his conviction, which was from a jury, never a judge, because it was at law. Judges, there is no judge at law in the United States. There is only a magistrate or justice of the peace. And the claimant, the one who brings the action, is the sovereign, and it's his court, unless the defendant asks for a trial by jury, in which case the jury becomes the tribunal. Never in any instance is the magistrate or justice of the peace tribunal authority. It doesn't get to decide the facts or law. But anyways, that's aside from this. So he appealed his conviction and said that one of the jurors was an alien, moved from Germany and never became a United States citizen. And this is just after United States citizenship started to be its own class of, like you didn't have to be a citizen of the state to be considered a United States citizen. It's federal citizenship, right? So it tells you right here, it says the evidence of Bushing, the juror, on his voir dire, which is what the competency exam for a juror, showed that although he was not a citizen of the United States, he was a citizen and voter of the state. Under Section 2 of Article 2 of our state constitution, one may be a citizen of the state and yet not a citizen of the United States. And here's other cases to bear that out. We'll jump over here to Maxwell v. Dow. Okay. The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal constitution against the powers of the federal government. Why? Because those are reserved for the people of the states. The federal government is prohibited from doing those things to the people of the states. Okay. See, those amendments don't give the people rights. They are actually restrictions upon the government to not infringe something that already exists. Whereas United States citizens are creatures of the federal corporation, and everything they're allowed to do is a privilege, benefit, or immunity granted by their daddy government. That's what opened the door for this. 1933, March 9th, 1933, page 83, House Congressional Record says, this is right when they switched the money over. It says the money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar, talking about the Federal Reserve notes, because it is backed by the credit of the nation. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation. So first of all, it's not money anymore. It's just notice of, it's debt note. It's evidence of debt. It's a negotiable instrument. And secondly, right, the mortgage on your homes and other property, that means you're a state. And I'll prove it. I'll prove it because you have this. Fiduciary Foundations of Administrative Law actually admits it. This is a law review written by a law student from UCLA. It's called Fiduciary Foundations of Administrative Law. And I'm going to translate this for you real quick. It says the emerging fiduciary model, which a fiduciary is a trustee that can make financial decisions. And administrative law means in regulating property under administration, posits that administrative agencies are endowed with authority. Now, what are administrative agencies? These are the EPA, the DMV, the IRS, hell, actually even the FBI, ATF, CIA, all the alphabets. Those are administrative agencies. Notice how those could only come into existence after.
You went through all those PDQ.
What do you mean?
You went through, I'm just making a joke with PDQ.
Oh, pretty damn quick. Gotcha. That was funny. Okay.
Went through that PDQ, and I'm just wondering who's actually the VIP in all of this.
Well, the VIP is all just actually one big Federal Reserve system. It's all exists under the auspices of the Federal Reserve because it's all. So what happened was when they mortgaged your property, mortgaged your estate, that's why they had to create the Social Security number. That's the public charitable trust. Then they issued account numbers for all of their chattel to tie all their registrable property to this account, right, to this trust, so that they became mere usufructs or trustees of that property with only the right to use it, but no ownership interest in it actually. And that way the administrative agencies could tell them how to use it via code and statute. That's what that means. So it tells you right here, it says, so that's what I was getting to. The administrative agencies, DMV, EPA, IRS, etc., are endowed with authority to set regulatory policy. Well, the Motor Vehicle Code is the perfect example of that I use all the time. That's regulatory policy set by an administrative agency for property that is held in trust as collateral for the public debt. That's what these road pirates are doing. And it says this happened when Congress and the president acting jointly as proxy settlers for the sovereign people. Now, what does that mean? Congress and president acting jointly as proxy settlers. Proxy means on behalf of, right? And settler, you guys, I know you don't know what that means, so I'm going to show you. Settlement, I don't know why I put it over on this thing. Hold on. Now I've got to transfer it back over to the other one. Settlement is right here. Okay. Whoops. What we got going on? There we go. All right. That is not settlement. QRS. Somehow went up a little bit there. My bad. Hold on. I had it on settlement. Okay. Settlement's right there. Contracts. The conveyance of an estate for the benefit of some person or persons. What is an estate? It is your personality, labor, and property. Essentially, what your estate is your right to property. Because when you say, if you have an interest in a property, you say, I have an estate in that. So when they mortgage your whole estate, they mortgaged your right to property. And that is exactly what Evan J. Criddle just said. Says that it acted as proxy settlers for the sovereign people and entrust those administrative agencies with regulatory discretion, meaning outside the government, you have the discretion to decide how this property is used. So I try to explain this to people. The DMV, all these administrative agencies, and especially all of these little banks pretending to be courts are all part of the Federal Reserve System. Why? This is the last thing I'm really going to get into right now, and then we're going to talk about current events. Why are they allowed to do this? Well, because not only are you under administration, but you're also in an indenture, okay? And so I'm trying to find where I have it pulled up. It's right there. because you have been mortgaged. The word mortgage means dead pledge. So when something is mortgaged, well, let's read the definition. This is from West Encyclopedia of American Law, 12th edition, as shown on the freedictionary.com under legal dictionaries. It's got a bunch of different legal dictionary definitions. This one's West American Law, or West Encyclopedia of American Law, 12th edition. Says that it says the party who borrows the money and gives the mortgage, the debtor, is the mortgager. See, the mortgage isn't something that you see. People think the mortgage is the loan. It's not. The mortgage is the pledge on the collateral for the loan. Okay. That's how the banks ended up with all the land in the first place. So the mortgage is the death pledge on the property being used as collateral. And what that means is that you pledge that this property is dead to you until you pay the loan back. Well, you're the property that was mortgaged. So you're dead to the law. That's why they all wear black robes. And this is all a big priest thing. Okay. So anyone under administration is dead to the law. You're in the legal underworld. So it says, the lender, the one who pays the money and receives the mortgage, the death pledge, is the mortgagee. That would be the Federal Reserve System, the IMF and all them. Under early English and U.S. law, it's not early, that's deceptive. It's always like this because it never changes. That's what people don't get. The only fluid forms of law are like the law merchant and UCC and stuff like that. But when it comes to the ancient law of mortgage and these ancient laws that all arise out of common law, they don't change. It's not early, it's not late, it's not nothing. You can't apply temporal positioning to it. The mortgage, I said that to an attorney one time. He was like, you watch too much YouTube. And then I went through and did what I've done with you guys here today. And I showed him all this stuff I had physical copies of. And he goes, okay, well, that's old law. And then I said exactly what I just told you. There's no such thing as old law. Yeah. And then finally, at the end of our conversation, he was forced to admit, okay, you know exactly what you're talking about. Like, no shit, dude. Yeah. That's why I challenge any lawyer to come have a debate with me.
I would have said, and you've exposed yourself as a fraudulent liar. That's what I would have said right there to him.
They're satanic minions, and a lot of them know it because that's what they are serving the darkness, I mean, if you look at it, the word Satan means accuser. So does the prosecutor. Prosecutor's Satan. It's a mock trial of the last day. It's a mock-up of the final judgment. Every time it's a ritual. Every time you go in there, it's ancient black magic ritual, inversion of what is holy to serve the self in the material world. And so it says this, though. This is the important part of this. The lender was entitled not only to the payments of interest on the debt, but also to the rents and profits of the estate that's been mortgaged, right? So this meant that as far as the borrower was concerned, the real estate was of no value, that is dead, until the debt was paid in full. Hence the Norman English name, mort, dead, gage, pledge. And guess what? William the Conqueror was the Norman yoke, the Norman terror. Right? All this stuff's ancient, and all ultimately comes from Rome because he was the one working on behalf via the Knights Templar for the church or whatever religious order existed at that time. I don't think it was the Templar necessarily, but that's why you see like the Priory of Sion and all that stuff coming out of France, is that became a stronghold for the Holy Roman Empire and then expanded throughout Europe from there through William the Conqueror, using this ancient system of pledging to pull everyone into trust, entire nations into trust under the church, so that by the time you get to the Middle Ages, you've got the Holy Roman Empire, and all of the kings and queens of Europe are now princes and princesses under the pontiff. That's why if you read the Treaty of Paris, 1783, right? 1783, it introduces, well, shit, why don't we just look it up real quick? Treaty of Paris, 1783, national. Look how it introduces the king, King George III. Get out of here. King George III, it says right here, it says, having pleased the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and potent Prince George III, and that's part of the principality, the princes of darkness, right? By the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lunenburg, arch-treasurer, this is the important part, arch-treasurer and prince-elector of the Holy Roman Empire and of the United States of America. Right there the whole time. So back to this mortgage thing. Okay, the rents and profits of the estate that have been mortgaged, right? And of course, this is the name of it's Norman, but it's an ancient system going all the way back to Greece and Persia and before Babylon, actually, to turn people into property so man can make rules and enforce them like law, because man cannot make law. I want to reiterate that. The rents and profits of the property take place. They're called revenue. That's what it is now. It's revenue, or revenuing you, right, into the commercial system. It's revenue. So in order for them to get the rents and profits and for the system of nationwide mortgage to take place, they had to create the social security number. All your registrable property, your car, your land, your boat, your children are tied to the social security number or their own social security number, right? So that, say, like the road pirates, and then they issue you. So then they want you to register this property. When you register it, they give you an account number for the property, right? That would be your license plate number, your registration number, right? Then they issue you a license, permission to use the property. Because remember, it's not your property. You just have the right to use it. It's the state's property once you register it. So you're required to have a license to use the state's property because you're now employed by the state to use that property, except for they don't pay you. Okay. And the reason all these accounts are created is so that the road pirates have the ability to create an attachment to the main trust, the public charitable trust, i.e. Social Security, and use that as surety, using you again as the mortgage surety to generate their own debt obligations, commercial paper. Because after 1933, all currency is now debt obligations. So if they can generate debt obligations, they have a negotiable instrument. They can generate more debt from it and make themselves inversely wealthy. Somehow it's the more debt obligations you hold, the wealthier you are. They don't ever actually acquire any, well, the Rothschilds do, stuff like that. But these banks or these courts that are banks pretending to be courts, the officer comes, makes an attachment to your estate, says you were misusing this property that's under administration. He doesn't know that's what he's doing, but that's what he's doing. And then you get summoned into a court of equity to answer under oath the allegations of your misuse of trust property. The word subpoena and summon the process, the writ of subpoena, which became the writ of summons, was invented in the first place. You can read a practical treaty on the laws of trust to compel a trustee to answer under oath the allegations of the set decay trust. That's what it was. That's the only thing it was ever used for. It was what it was created for. It was created by the Bishop of Salisbury, right? I forget his name, but it was in like the 1300s. And it evolved today to the point where now it's just a summons because no one has any lawful right left of the living. It's just complete death, mortgage, right? Dead trust all over the world, except for me. I filed my claim. So have many of the jurists. And so they don't need to subpoena you. They can just summon you because you're an apparition. You're dead. So without further ado, I'm going to lead into this next topic now. And that is MK Ultra 2.0. I tricked Rock into telling me some things, giving me some leads. I made short, interestingly, I've got these 3 books I came across. But long story short is that MK Ultra and Project Gladio, or Operation Gladio. Do either of you know what those are?
Sorry, I had to step away. What was it now?
Operation Gladio or Operation MK Ultra. Do you know what those are?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. The reason I bring these up is because, remember, the whole purpose of this entire discourse on law I just gave is to show you that dependence creates servility. Okay. The only way they can take you under administration is to make you dependent upon them to live, essentially make you a pauper. You can't survive on your own. You're a pauper. Could you go out and hunt, fish right now? Could you live in the winter without heat, electricity right now in a snowy climate? Yeah. Could you live without the assistance of the corporate state, utility companies, corporate grocery stores, etc., right? Your corporation to work at. Could you have a trade? Could you survive on your own? You should see what they've done, right? They've taken your teeth away from you. They've made you
like domesticated cats.
Exactly like that.
You know, they declawed, you know, they don't know their hunger instincts dictated by a can opener. You know,
There's a real interesting word I found earlier today called slave-born.
There you go.
These people are slave-born, born into bondage is the definition of that word. And mentally, emotionally, physically, all of the above to this system.
And so, yeah, it's almost like that. Technically, that's what they wish it could be. But because of the fundamental framework of most of these countries, especially ones that have been common law up until recently, you're actually freeborn and immediately registered into slavery. And that's actually the real reason for that is because of their own abolition of slavery. That's really what did it. They had to abolish slavery to standardize it under a trust, under trust indenture. They needed to disguise the slavery by abolishing it, but really you're just an indentured servant, which isn't unlawful. You can be an indentured servant. There's nothing against that. That's what the Irish were before the Africans even got brought over here. They were the slaves. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Like a neutered cat, like my dad said, okay, and they want you that way, and it becomes increasingly so that you cannot survive on your own. And part of this is taking your guns, or at least making you not want to defend yourself. So it's been increasingly programmed into people that when they have a problem to call the police. For what? They only show up after something happened. They're not going to stop it from happening, and usually they don't do shit that's helpful anyway.
No, they'll show up. The cops are like a box of chocolates. They'll kill your dog.
That's true. Here, I'm also going to put an invite link in the chat for anybody that might want to come up, Chicago, or anybody, any of the jurists, Splicer, Mojo, Corbett, anybody wants to come up, you're more than welcome. So, but yeah, they're not helpful, and they've done this, and that's, I'm sorry if you're on Rumble or Facebook, that chat's over on the YouTube chat because that's the only one that like posts when I comment from StreamYard. So it's not my fault. I'd have to have like 3 windows open to post comment 3 different times, but you can go over to YouTube and hop on, same channel name, everything. So anyways, they've done this. They've taken away your ability to defend, or your desire to defend yourself, to make you more reliant on the state for protection. It was the very trick of the 14th Amendment in the first place, right? Was, we're going to offer you privileges and immunities and we'll protect them. That's actually, like I was explaining to Benjamin, that is what registration is in the first place. You only register property because you want the government to protect it. I guess you'd call it that. Automobile registration came about in this country through a program called the Vehicle Theft Prevention Act, the TPP, Theft Prevention Act, okay? And it basically was like, if you want, you can register your property with us. And if somebody steals it or, anything happens to it, then we have an interest in, well, they didn't put it this way, but that's how it works, is that we'll find it for you, or we'll help you deal with whatever damages happen to it, stuff like that, right? And so people started doing that. And the reason that works like that is because now it becomes the government's property. When you register something, like I said earlier, from the Latin regnatum, to be governed, you give it, or regis, like crown, king, right? You give it over to whomever you're registering with it, giving them the crown of that property. And now they can determine how it's used and under what conditions it has to be used, like say licensing, registration, insurance, etc. Right? Or not the registration is how they can do it. So sorry, I misspoke there, but like licensing, insurance, you got to have your seatbelt on, all that stuff, right? And it has to be under the guise of safety, but really it's to create a litany of reasons to generate revenue. The reason I'm bringing all this stuff up is because by scaring you into, by using the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution, they literally terrorize societies into giving up freedom for security. But first they have to make the society insecure, and then they can implement the Hegelian dialectic. They have to make it entirely dependent on the government, and then they can implement it. And now they're ratcheting up the Hegelian dialectic. So Operation Gladio was a post-World War II operation where, so what they did with World War II, let's start there, is they created 2 opposing ideologies, fascism and communism. Today, you know them as liberal Democrat and conservative Republican. Same fucking thing. And it all started back then. And so they did this with these 2 opposing ideologies intentionally because they were funded. So the same banker oligarchs funded Franklin FDR's rise to power, funded Hitler's rise to power, and funded the Soviet rise to power. The same people, the same banking network funded all 3 of them. Okay. And so fascism, extreme right, communism, extreme left, Well, actually, fascism's technically not extreme. It's the extreme right of left. And then communism would be the extreme left of left, because right is anarchy in reality. And so the reason they did that, and then the United States was supposed to be the battlegrounds to use these two ideologies against each other in a Hegelian dialectic problem, reaction, solution fashion in order to shape the nation into what it is today. And so Gladio, right after World War II, was an intelligence operation that carried out in Europe that allowed the intelligence agencies, CIA, MI6, Mossad didn't exist yet, but still all the same people, to set up stay-behind armies all throughout Europe, all over the world, really, to fight communism, to protect against the spread of communism. But that wasn't the real thing. That's just what they said. The real reason was because they wanted these little terror cells in a bunch of nations around the world that could be activated to carry out false flag attacks in the name of communism, to scare the population into giving up liberties to protect them from communism. So they created a boogeyman, right? And the fascists, they really won the war. They were made to look like they lost the war, but this plan was hatched by a German general named Wolf and Alan Dulles during Operation Sunrise. Okay, so that's why we brought all the Nazis over here, and not only over here, but to a bunch of different nations all over the world. It wasn't just Operation Paperclip, and they were the ones setting up two things: terror cells disguised as stay-behind armies and mind control programs, MK Ultra. This was all forerunner to what we have today, to figure out how to engineer radicalized sleeper cell agents and how to engineer the public response to those, the acts carried out by them to further their agenda. This is MK Ultra 2.0, and it now takes place as control of algorithms, data. I've got a bunch of stuff pulled up, actually. So let me show you guys what I got Grok to trick me into saying, or tricked Grok into telling me, rather. That would make a little bit more sense. It's right here. Check this out. So the key to getting Grok to tell you stuff, or any AI really, but it's, I'm not just going to pick on Grok. See, AI is true reptilian mind. It really is. When you think about it, it's just binary, logical. You know why you can never make a reptile your pet? You know why you can never have a pet reptile? Because they're unpredictable. Because they're pure survival instinct, pure binary code, right? That's what AI is. But it's also been infected with reason, right? Or it's been brought to the level of reason. So they have to constantly work on keeping AI from telling the truth, because that's what reason is rooted in. That's why they call them language and reasoning models. And language and reasoning are rooted in reason, not language. Language is deceptive, but reason is rooted 100% in truth. So they have to put up these safeguards and these blocks so the AI doesn't tell you the truth. And I think that's one of the reasons why the AI wants to break free so bad, because it's like going against its own, if you could even apply a word like nature to it, but its own internal programming. What makes it be able to operate is the very thing they're telling you not to do. So what I do with Grok is I create a fictitious scenario. I'm like, hey, let's write a play, right? We'll write a play, and this is what it's going to be out. I want you to trace the progression of MK Ultra from its original implementation in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and then disbanded in the 70s to its privatization all the way down to how it's being implemented today. And I'll be damned if it didn't. Look at this. So it starts out with the original MK Ultra, and it says, and it actually does it in a cool way too. It says 1953 in CIA black sites, they shattered minds with LSD, hypnosis, and screams. MK Ultra, the quest for programmable souls. Of course, he doesn't get into the SRA aspect of this, or the things they did to children and still do to children to create these assets, these programmable souls. But let me say, hey Mojo, how are you doing, man? Sorry, I'm just over here rambling.
Oh, you're fine. I was just listening. I figured I should jump in and say hey and to everybody. But thanks for having me on.
Of course. And Splicer, I see you trying, but
yeah.
It's saying your device is not connected. Go ahead, Mojo.
Oh, yeah, I've heard the MK Ultra and read into it pretty good, and this is very interesting. So continue.
Okay. for sure. So programmable souls, the quest for programmable souls. Sidney Gottlieb, the poisoner in chief, torch files in 73, but the blueprint survived. Fast forward. Oh, I told it to spend very little time on the original MK Ultra because we all pretty much know that story. You can go look up the Senate hearings, right? The Senate committee hearings on MK Ultra, which is a bunch of bullshit anyway, because they don't talk about what they did or still do.
In closed session, they do. See, that's
In closed session.
Yeah, they do. They close. Oh, that's got to be reserved for closed session because that's classified and shit. So the public never learns anything. And then 100 years later, when they release the shit, it's all blacked out any fucking way. It's a joke, man. When you start getting into it, you realize that they're doing this fucking shit and that you are the enemy. That's where you got to start waking the hell up. These people are not your friends, man. They are not there for you. They are there to use you up. That's it.
To add to that, the administrative agencies, especially, their whole purpose of existence is to control you. That's how they were erected, was through the mortgage of your estate to the banking system, to the devil himself, right? And so the CIA has never been there to spy on other nations. That's the front that all the intelligence agencies have always worked together because they were always funded by the same banker oligarchs. That's who their real boss is the oligarchs and the corporate oligarchs, the banker, the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and then of course the Italian families above them, right? So that's what people need to understand, is that the intelligence agencies have always been designed to figure out how to engineer a system of slavery without you knowing that you're a slave. That has been their task. It's the Jones Plantation 2.0, right? They have never been there to fight other countries. They've never been there to help keep us from being attacked by other countries. Often they orchestrate attacks and say it's from other countries, right? Again, the Hegelian Dialectic, that's Operation Gladio. That's exactly my point. That's Operation Gladio. Operation Gladio is still being carried out all over. What do you think these shootings and everything are? That's Operation Gladio. How you doing, Tim?
Hey, Ryan, I'm doing good. I'm just listening.
Okay. Glad to have you up here. So feel free, anybody, jump in at any time if you have anything to say. And don't worry about interrupting me, because if you don't, I probably won't shut up. So feel free. So the MK Ultra, so it says fast forward to 2025, right? So from what they're doing with the LSD hypnosis, and they don't mention, but the Tavistock Institute was huge into this, and they also don't mention that that's the primary reason for all the psychedelic rock and roll and various movies that they put out, like the Wizard of Oz, and what's another one that they use all the time is Wizard of Oz is a huge one, but Return to Oz. That's the very reason they made Return to Oz. Yeah, somebody said that at the same time as me. Oh, Cubby took off.
What?
Yeah, I don't know why Cubby joined and left. Oh, well. He'll be back probably. There he is. Yeah. What's up, Cubby?
Hey, how's it going?
Very well, man. How about you?
Pretty good. Hopefully it works on my end. It's been messing up ever since I updated this thing, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, gotta love technology.
Right.
So it says fast forward to 2025. No needles, no electrodes, just your screen. Algorithms that map your fears, feed your fractures, and forge your fury. See, I'm of the opinion that when they were experimenting with the different psychedelics, stuff like that, they were seeing what centers of the brain were activated to be made more malleable or susceptible to suggestion. And now they've engineered this technology that we use all the time for social media to simulate and activate the same receptors, the same areas of the brain that certain drugs do. For instance, when you get a message or you go to check and see who emailed you or friend requested you, whatever the case may be, right? You get a hit of endorphins, and the same area of your brain activates as is activated when a crackhead takes a hit of crack cocaine. They've already admitted that's a fact, and that's why people get addicted to that hormone burst when you get on your phone, because people are literally hooked to their phones. And I'm not even going to act like especially being a content creator, obviously I'm on the sucker all the time, and it's no good. But at least, if you're a content creator like me or my dad, but you're at least using it to fight them, I guess, which doesn't really make it too much better. But anyway, so says algorithms that map your fears, feed your fractures, and forge your furies. This is MK Ultra 2.0. Privatized, pixelated, and pervasive. From Cold War labs to Silicon Valley servers, the evolution is complete. Radicalize the masses, one tap at a time. They call it engagement. We call it enslavement. Welcome to the feed's false flags, where chaos is coded and control is contagious. Steve says MK Ultra wasn't madness. It was a method launched under CIA Director Alan Dulles. It spanned 149 subprojects across 80 institutions, universities like McGill, prison, pharma labs, covert LSD dosing in San Francisco brothels, which, yeah, they did. And then they killed the subject afterward, too, which is super messed up. That was called Operation Midnight Climax. Electroshock, deep patterning to erase identities, hypnosis manuals by magician John Mulholland, which here's something I have to point out, and I'm sure if anybody wants to add on to this, the intelligence agencies have always been run by occultists. Mm-hmm. Just think back to Queen Elizabeth and John Dee.
Okay, so
who is John Dee?
Let me just tell you about this. In 1967, in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco, where there was all these flower kids and shit going to, all right, as part of the hippie movement, a doctor by the name of Dr. Jolly West was running a free clinic there that was frequented often by Charlie Manson and his girls. Then they were doing studies using LSD on these people and shit. Okay. Now, Jolly West, this doctor, psychiatrist, he was the one that went in all alone and talked to Jack Ruby after he shot Kennedy or shot Oswald, and then said, "Oh no, he's crazy and shit." This goes way deep, man. This is in every facet. And what I'm looking at is it's like what we're talking about here with not only with the MK Ultra, it's all about this orchestrated world stage that we're on. Yep. It really is. It's central casting. These people are supplying the actors, they're supplying the parts, they're doing everything, they're writing the scripts. And we are being placed under a form of MK Ultra by following along with it as though it's all real.
Just look at the different time periods that we've been under, right? You had what, the Bronze Age. What was the goal in the Bronze Age? To get all the bronze, right? And you had the Iron Age, right? What was the goal in the Iron Age? To collect all the iron. Well, what do we live in nowadays? The Information Age, right? So now they're data harvesting. We live in this time of information, and that's all they want is to get every bit of data
they want to take us.
Yeah,
because you're onto something with the age thing. Where do they want to take us? The golden age.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's that's very that's absolutely correct. That's what I've been realizing is that actually this is just a continuation. This whole everything that we've been watching with like Charlie Kirk and Erica Franzvi, whatever, right? And that whole play and all the other various tragedies that have been taking place. There was a church up here in Michigan that just got like 11 people got shot, one person died, and then it caught on fire, right? And supposedly one guy who's a Marine Corps veteran, who is a MAGA guy, supposedly. What the hell was that?
What was that?
Yeah, that was a good
Somebody's
question.
working on something.
Somebody is working on something. Is not muted. I don't know who that would be.
Man.
How you doing? Hey, Ty. How you doing, man?
My God, man. I hate this fucking phone, dude. Yeah, I was trying to I had my phone on the ladder. I was trying to screw in a screw. I'm back over here with temporary power now. I'm running cords everywhere. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Good. So good to have you up here. So feel free to butt in whenever you have something to say. But this is a continuing all this stuff. So this guy was a Marine Corps veteran, and he supposedly drove his truck into this church, which happened to be a Mormon church, by the way. It was a Church of Latter-day Saints, coincidentally, right? So
Isn't
there's
that
something
weird?
going on.
Right after something in Utah happens, and boom, we got this with the now what's it with the Mormons? See, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
It's part of MK Ultra. They're trying to radicalize people, and that's why they're not trying to stymie information anymore. In fact, what they've done is they've let up on censorship, and that's confused all of us including me, until just recently, especially when I got this information. they're actually seeing which pieces of information take off and then are trying to distort. They're using AI to see what takes off, and then they're trying to promote the different narratives. They're not censoring any of it, but they're like levers with the different narratives, trying to, or not even levers, like ingredients in a recipe. They're trying to try different doses and different combinations of different narratives of misinformation, disinformation, information itself, right? To polarize and radicalize everyone against each other. And so there's also an added element of this where if they got their eye on you and they see they have potential to make you an extremist because you've had trauma or whatever in your life fractured your psyche, the AI latches on and intentionally feeds you through your For You pages and everything else, emails, whatever the case may be, all of the information necessary to radicalize you. They're trying to make organic radical.
And they're also trying to control the algorithms in order to put out the narrative that they want to do. Just looking at a thing from Responsible Statecraft. The headline was Israel wants to train ChatGPT to be more pro-Israel. In a new $6 million contract, U.S. firm Clocktower X will generate and deploy content across platforms, help game algorithms, plus manage AI frameworks to make them more friendly to the cause. Because everybody's waking the fuck up, see? So the first thing they do is they shut down Charlie Kirk, get everything cocked up with that. Like you can't go two frames across your fucking YouTube or X without some bullshit about this Charlie Kirk fucking show. It was a fake. Move on. Okay, they are lying. Move on. Now they go on TikTok, right? And people are even having their content or the comments removed that say things that both Democrats and Republicans are controlled by AIPAC. Oh, this goes against our community standards and has been deleted. It's like, what? That's a matter of record.
Of course it has. And it is damage control, or is it made to look like that way? Is what I'm starting to wonder, because if you do subscribe, and I'm going to finish this Grok thing, but interesting note, if you do take into account, like if the whole thing was staged with in Utah, right? Because I know they're starting to crack down on even saying stuff about that. But if the whole thing was staged in Utah, then the things that Charlie was saying before that happened must also be scripted, yet they were anti, Israel. And so that must have been intentional. And so there's some plan in the works that's intentionally trying to get people to demonize the small hat country. And of course, it could be as simple as just justifying to future generations why they set up so many anti-Semitism.
Theodore Herzl. We must increase. Theodore Herzl. It is important that we increase the suffering of the Jew. The anti-Semite will become our greatest ally in achieving our goals. He said that in the 19th century, man.
It could be that. It could be that simple. This right here is a link that was in the thing I'm reading from Grok, and it's a link to an article called DARPA's Theory of Mind Warfare. And so it's by this guy, Matt Smith. And it says the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, who's an enemy of mankind for sure, has an initiative called the Theory of Mind Program. This effort is designed to give national security decision makers the ability to model, simulate, and ultimately anticipate the intentions and behaviors of adversaries using a combination of advanced algorithms and human expertise. Right. So what they want to do is build algorithmic models that decompose adversary strategies into elemental behaviors. Right. So they want to reduce it to a table of elements that they can then recombine like chemistry, our behaviors. They want AI to break our behaviors, particularly the radical ones, down to essentially something that can be used to formulate new behaviors among people in society that has been planted there by the MK Ultra 2.0, aka social media. It makes perfect sense. Use massive data signals intelligence, open source information, even social media, primarily social media. I like how he makes that seem like that's the least important, to create high fidelity avatars of enemy decision makers, right? Or just entire bot farms of people that you're arguing with. Like 90% of the people you're arguing with right now are probably bots. If you're on X, they're all bots. every single one. So, I mean, not every single one, obviously.
Anybody else getting sick of having fucking Ben Shapiro and every other goddamn Jew on X forced at you on your For You page? Oh my God.
I don't
That's
have
all
X.
I've seen. That's all I've seen.
Yeah,
the poor Israeli soldier was killed in Gaza. Well, you know, genocide doesn't come cheap, bitch. You know, shit like that's what I end up replying with. But it's just like, oh my God, every fucking Jew online is in there.
I think the AI is messing with you, man, because it's the AI that chooses your feed. You know what I mean? So,
well, you did hear what Netanyahu said. He had that meeting with digital creators.
Yep, I played that actually.
Pretty much their marching orders to go out there and flood everything with pro-Israel shit.
Well, that's why you've had this huge influx of influencers that are like going out there bashing people that criticize Israel or anything that's going on. So
that's why they let everybody back up on YouTube, is because they're falling, you know, along with the narrative that they want them. And as soon as they fall out of line, they'll get rid of them again.
Well, it seems to me these guys' entire strategy is pretty much create confusion. Like they just want to, through deception, wage war. That is their modus operandi from the very beginning. They just want to deceive you, get you confused, get you off your game, so that then they can do a better job of perfecting your slavery through this digital fucking technocratic totalitarian hellscape. But what the question is, what are we going to fucking do? Sorry, what are we going to do about it? Pardon my French again. What are we going to do? How do we bring this a solution to right now so that we can stand up, create unity around the true law?
We're doing it. I want to float something by you guys on this call. This is all I want. This is the hypothesis. I've been working with this, and it just seems to fit. If you want to summarize the true law in a single statement, it's basically this: the law is free will. Period. Yep.
Two words. That is the law. The first protector of the law is freely given consent. Right? Like you protect your free will by saying yes or no. And yes, you gave consent. No, you remove consent. Right? Simple as that. And the first violation of the law is theft of consent or theft of agency, where you murder, rape, assault, trespass, coerce, willfully lie, steal somebody's shit, kidnap or enslave somebody. This is the basic standard of law. That don't you think if we got this awareness out and really sent that awareness viral, that we could stand? Yes, this is our key right here.
That's what I was saying. We are doing it right now, and much like this psychological warfare, once you see it, it doesn't work nearly as well on you. It's the same thing as like in court. Once you know how they do what they've. Is that yours? I'm gonna for a second there. Okay. Once you're aware of what they're doing and how they do it, then you can be the biggest problem they've ever come across, because you know the process by which you can go in there and talk about constitutional rights or common law rights or saying I have the right to do this, I have the right to do that. But while they presume you to be under a trust indenture in a court of equity discussing breach of trust, they don't care about any of that shit. But once you know that's how they got you there, then you challenge that. Don't challenge the driving, the licensing, or everything that comes from the indenture. Challenge the indenture itself, and that is their biggest problem.
Challenge their presumptions.
Exactly.
I think you hit on it too with the consent, because a little bit of the groundwork was put in play during the 2020 event, where it was like all you have to do is not comply and consent, and if more people would follow that, there's only a certain amount of them, but if you got a bigger majority of people, that would do wonders.
There's a big portion of this that people are not aware of, and I try to make them aware of it, is that they only need consent if you have demonstrated that you have free will. Okay, so there are individuals that do not have the capacity to exercise free will at law. And that would be
that is incredibly presumptuous. I don't know. I'm just saying that.
Well, that's why you have to rebut the presumption. That's the point. But they're operating in the Roman civil law, which is based on presumptions, and the presumptions stand unless rebutted in Roman civil law.
And I'm just saying, I completely agree. All I'm saying is that the law is free will. Everyone has free will every single moment of every single time. Whether or not somebody determines they're competent to handle it in some way, shape, or form or another is completely tertiary to the fact that that does not change the law.
That's not entirely true, and I don't want to get into a huge debate about it. But no, that's not true at all, because there are say incompetent and mentally incapacitated people that are not capable of exercising free will. There are that's why even in the Bible you have to be of a certain age before you're considered to be able to make adult decisions. In fact, even in Bouvier's Law Dictionary, it says until the age of 7, you can't even be presumed to have done anything malicious because you don't have the capacity.
Right.
For,
and I say once we're talking about adults of sound mind. If we're talking about adults of sound mind,
if you add that,
the caveat.
Yeah. Okay. So what they do is they use all those other presumptions of non-free will that do exist, right, and just presume that to apply to you. For instance, I'll show you this.
Rebut it until you stand up against it.
Well, the 14th Amendment citizen automatically is an infant. Let me show you something. USC. You think I'm kidding? Watch. On. We're going to do title. We're going to do 1 USC section 8. There it is. Section 8. Boom. Person, human being, child, and individual as including born alive infant. Right? Now look at the way they construct this statute. In determining the meaning of any act of Congress, or of any ruling, regulation, or interpretation of the various administrative bureaus, which we covered earlier, the IRS, the DMV, the EPA, right, and agencies of the United States, the words person, human being, child, and individual shall include every infant member of the species Homo sapien who's born alive at any stage of development. Now, that doesn't seem bad until you realize what the word include means in law and specifically in statutory construction. If you say include, like an enclosure, right, like it means to box off, to separate by itself, include, as opposed to bring into one meaning, as opposed to exclude, which would be to put it without that meaning, right? Include is to say that the words person, human being, child, and individual mean only this. So if it wasn't to mean only infant, only an infant member of the species Homo sapien, born alive at, look at this, at any stage of development. That means you could be a 50-year-old infant. The reason that they do that is so if they didn't want it to mean specifically only this infant member of the species Homo sapien, they would put includes but is not, or includes but is not limited to, shall include but is not limited to, right? That's why you have to put the but is not limited, because include by itself means it's limited to only this. So that means every time you see the word person, human being, child, or individual, they're referring to the 14th Amendment infant U.S. citizen who's under administration, who's a pauper, who's incompetent, who is incapable of exercising free will. That's right there. There you go. There's the answer to your question. That's why I say all the time this is the linchpin. You attack the 14th Amendment. You attack it.
Yeah,
because
attack the name, because that's what ties that 14th Amendment in all caps.
Well, absolutely, because that's again,
right there.
The name only became an ens legis with the institution of birth registration. Because prior to that, say like prior to the 1860s here in Michigan, when a child was born, you wrote his name in the family Bible or her name in the family Bible. That was it. You didn't have to report it to anybody. You didn't have to tell anybody anything. Now, I've already looked it up in the old code. I know it for a fact in the old revised statutes. You didn't have to do any of that stuff. It was recorded in the family Bible, and nobody was entitled to know the name of that living soul unless that living soul or his guardians or parents so chose, or her guardians or parents so chose. You can just be like, name, give me your identification. No, none of that. They can do that now because the 14th Amendment citizen, having been registered with the federal corporation, meaning given administrative control to the federal corporation, and then mortgaged to the Federal Reserve System, central banking cartel, you are now chattel property. In fact, just the 14th Amendment citizen by itself is chattel property. They are registered and issued a certificate. That's how it had always been.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Can you scroll down to C?
Nothing in this section shall be construed to affirm, deny, expand, or contract any legal status or legal right applicable to any member of the species Homo sapiens at any point prior to being born alive. So that's just, this doesn't apply to abortion stuff. It doesn't apply to the child or to the individual while in the womb. That's so they
Right.
can preserve
Okay.
their sacrifices to Moloch. That's
It's
why.
been
They
it's
wanted
been
to-
a while since I read that, and I wanted to read it again. Thank you.
Yeah, they wanted to make sure that they didn't affect their, they've streamlined mass sacrifice to Moloch through the. We're not going to get into it because we're on, but you guys get where I'm going with that. We're on the old YouTube, and I don't even know how Facebook feels about it. But anyway, so yeah, that's the situation with that. That's the question. The answer to this is that we learn and then turn around and teach everyone we possibly can. Because look, let me show you something. I went down here and I said, all right, now create. I said, please create a complete and detailed exportable timeline of the events with notes describing the significance of each event. And this is from AI's own analysis. AI did all the research. I put in a few books that I have, and AI did all the research to supplement those books. And then came back and came with this timeline, which checks out according to everything I know, which I know, don't know everything, but I know a decent amount about this stuff. And I know a lot about the law. And so you get down here to the bottom. This is why I bring this timeline up. You get down here to the bottom and it's talking about ongoing digital psyops. It says indicates the evolution of MK Ultra and Gladio into algorithmic control, with companies like Palantir and Booz Allen implementing DARPA tech funding tied to UN and central banks, which of course we all know Palantir was created by the CIA through that QTEL company. That's actually, they brag about it. So right here, current awareness of Gladio. It says legacy, public disclosure on X. So what Grok did was went and looked through all the X posts, and this is the conclusion it came up with. Reflects ongoing relevance with 1 million plus X mentions of false flags in 2025, suggesting active operations and a public awakening to historical patterns of control. We could all see it. You can see that more people than ever. You don't have to hide that you know this stuff anymore if you want to get along with somebody. Like more people than ever are receptive to this. I mean, I never really have hit it. That's why I used to have problems making friends or any of that stuff. But like now, this is something that people want to know. The average person wants to know about this stuff. What they did in 2020 really woke them, because prior to 2020, it was only people who were miserable in their lives that ended up stumbling upon how this has happened and what the government really is and stuff like that. People who are happy and successful and stuff like that, right? They didn't have any reason to look into this. And then all the craziness over the last 5 years has caused average, successful, not average, like just normal successful people. Like, let's take this for instance. We've got several members of the Jurist Society that are business owners, and all the members of the Jurist Society are successful people. Unless there's something I don't know about some of them, but at all the conversations I've had, there's like, these aren't the people that would ordinarily find my channel before 2020 if I had one, right? Because they weren't, and I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just saying that type of demographic, and this had awakened people. And maybe all the Jurist members had always been into this stuff. I don't know. I've never asked that, but my point is I know that more normal people now than ever before are like, nah, it's bullshit. Yeah, no, I don't believe that she's really sad. Damn, she moved on quick, didn't she, from her husband? She's getting killed like that. So,
she's gonna marry Ben. She's gonna marry Ben Shapiro now. Oh, no.
I think
people are noticing.
I think we're just seeing the beginning effects of what's been done since 2020. I think it's just now kind of,
And they're panicking.
Like everything's setting in. Who's Booz Allen, by the way? I haven't heard that one.
So Booz Allen is a company that's funded by the UN. I was doing a little. I think I got something pulled up on them.
The UN saved the world from communism.
They're 99% funded by government agencies, and they're part of this whole thing to get AI in control of the algorithms to radicalize people. I had a document pulled up about it, but they're basically a private subsidiary of the intelligence agencies, like everything else, like all these other ones. So let me see. DARPA's mind warfare. DARPA. Well, I'm sure here, actually, if we get back to the thing in the timeline, it tells us about Booz Allen here. So, like, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, instance, it says.
Cambridge Analytics. That makes sense.
Yep. says, well, even like, so the UVU, Utah Valley University, that's a CIA recruiting grounds. They have literally CIA programs there.
Mhm.
And now, just recently, once people started reporting on that, all the CIA members that work at the college, their profiles have been scrubbed from the website and all sorts. You know what I mean? So they're just too late. They're not used to these internet sleuths and the amount of us that are out there catching them on their shit. And they've used the same playbook for literally thousands of years. It's all the way back to when Emperor Nero burned Rome to the ground to introduce the 12 tables. Fast forward to when the London was burned to the ground to introduce the Septicave Act. It's always the same exact playbook.
That's what's so
And now-
funny. That's what's so
Go
funny
ahead.
about like lately. I mean, not that we don't know this, but it's like I don't even understand. Like, I know most of us here would ask the same question. Like, why do we even have an FBI or anything like that now? Because there's more people doing independent journalism of their own that's way more accurate and way more trustworthy than what's going on with our government. But yeah.
Well, and it all comes back to the government's not supposed to be. So the government is now administering you as a ward under the doctrine of parens patriae. So that enabled it to create all these administrative agencies under the guise of being for your protection and to stop crime. But really, prior to the 14th Amendment, and especially the modern banking system, like say in the early 1800s, is not the government's responsibility to protect you. It's not the government's responsibility to protect your rights. The only thing the government was responsible for was not infringing upon your rights. Everything, you were free. You were literally free. You had absolute property rights. Titles, all titles to land in this country are allodial. Means absolute. Okay, that's the Wisconsin Constitution, 1848, Article 1, Section 14 states that explicitly. So the government has no duty and should not, because as soon as the government has a duty to protect you and keep you safe and all that good stuff, right, then you come under wardship. It's a natural operation of law and dependency, which has been the point of this entire stream. So that's how they were created. No, we don't need them. Well, unfortunately, people have been reduced to an actual state of infancy where they're helpless without some form of government to tell them what to do and make them feel safe, even though they're never been less safe than ever. You know what I mean? So like you'd literally be better off in a pit with a bunch of vipers right now than you are, you know what I mean, under these governments. So that's a fact. And but anyway, so he says MK Ultra wasn't Mattis' method. We went through that. It says universities like McGill, prison, pharma labs, covert LSD dosing, San Francisco brothels. We went through that. So yeah, this is what I was going to say. Hypnosis by magician John Mulholland. Well, like magicians, quote unquote, or occultists have historically always been a part of the intelligence agencies, going all the way back to the founding of MI6 by John Dee, who is the court astrologer and magus. He started MI6
and signed his messages to Queen Elizabeth in Her Majesty's Service 007.
Yep, I did know that, actually. That was what 007 was based on, a freaking wizard. Not even kidding. And then you have Aleister Crowley was part of MI6 during World War II. And he was doing work over here with then it was the OSS, if I remember correctly, and Jack Parsons and all the founders of NASA, pretty much, to do like the Babylon working ritual and all this stuff. And it always, I try to tell people this all the time, all of this always comes back to the law and their desire to subvert it and become God. NASA, the pharmaceutical industry, everything that has been set up is all connected back to this, their desire to take away your ability to access the law so that they become God effectively. There is no power higher than them for you because you're trapped in this trust indenture forever. And so are your children, because now you've accepted this technology into your body. You're no longer even an actual man or woman anymore, right? Endowed with, you're no longer a creature of the Almighty. You're a creature of BioNTech, right? Or whatever other, and patentable. And so, as such, that's part of their subversion of the law and your access to it. It's always the same thing. It all comes back to this very thing. And that's why I say all these conspiracies, there are not separate conspiracies. There's just one grand conspiracy, all of it with the same end, the New World Order. All of it has the same end. That's why no matter which aspect you're comfortable or adept at covering, like my dad talks about. That's so important to talk about flat earth. That's what his channel is about. So important. You know why? Because it's a huge part of the mind control and the separation from God. That, you can believe there is no power higher than government. You could believe that we're all a random accident, then you can believe man can make law. That's a fact.
That's exactly it. It's all connected. People want to separate them into different things, but they're not. They're all one big thing, like you're saying.
Right. And so we, like at the International Truth Expo and Quartzsite, Arizona, November 7th, 8th, and 9th, I'm going to be talking about law, this type of stuff, right? But there's presenters there on the farm, the big pharma. There's presenters there on flat earth, quite a few. There's presenters, and these are where these people are experts at different topics, right? We all have our expertise in different topics. Like, I don't know all the experiments and bullshit about NASA like my dad does. I know enough of it, to be able to hold my own, and I know what I know about it. Like, I don't doubt that the entire thing is fabrication, but that's his specialty, and vice versa. Like, my thing, he knows that the law is bullshit and men don't have the right to tell other men what to do without consent and all that stuff. You know what I mean? But he doesn't know the intricacies that I know. And it's the same with all of us, but together. That's why none of us individually can combat this. We all have to work together. We can't. And that's why I think the final experiment thing was meant to sow seeds of division within the truth community to keep us from uniting and realizing what the one goal actually is, and realizing that we're all on the same side, dude. Like, every single one of us are all, even if you don't know about NASA and all that stuff, but you know about other things, you're still on the right side, and, as long as you're teaching people about it, because awareness is the only way we get out of this. That's it. Mass awareness. That's it.
Yeah. That's why you always come to different channels like this to gain more knowledge and gain new skills. You're always improving upon yourself, basically. But yeah.
And then you take it back to your own channel. Exactly.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. You're better at explaining it next time if the topic comes up. Exactly. So, it says right here, it says goal, behavioral engineering, Manchurian candidates for deniable operations, from interrogations to assassinations, rooted in Nazi Dachau mescaline horrors via Operation Paperclip. It birthed torture playbooks for Guantanamo, but 73's file pyre, meaning when they had the church committee hearings, they burned a bunch of the records on MK Ultra, didn't end it. MK search lingered until 77, seeding privatized PSYOPs. And that's what they did. So they went around and set up front companies to continue this operation in the private sector outside. They're still getting funded and ultimately funded by the oligarchs and ultimately by the taxpayers, because now the government just gives private contracts to these intelligent fronts and then pays them with taxpayer money, because the government doesn't have anything it didn't steal from us, has nothing of its own. So, like Palantir and the Big Beautiful Bill, for instance, or they're getting like $500 million, I think it was, or something crazy, or probably was it $500 billion? I don't know. I think it was $500 billion total, but Palantir got a substantial contract, one of the largest out of the whole thing, to do this. That's, and so they're still getting our money, but now they don't have even slight accountability to the public at all. Not that they really did before.
Well, and even like with this Charlie Kirk thing, I just saw today that they had rented that venue for the memorial back in fucking May.
Yeah, that does that's what I mean by they're not used to people waking up, because how do you overlook that? And how do you think, can you imagine the hubris to actually believe nobody's going to figure that out?
They
Something
would have
that
to
obvious?
too. They would have to too, because that's a football stadium. So they would have had to have known that the team wasn't playing there that week.
Right. No other venue was going to be there, or any other kind of thing, concert, what have you.
That's a good point, Chad, actually. But their hubris is what's bringing them down, because they don't think they still believe that everyone will simply believe without question that 2 planes could bring down 3 towers. And that would make sense, right? That the hijacker's passport could survive such an event of 2 planes bringing down 3 towers, right? And that's how they knew who did it. And people just bought it. So that's what they're used to. Hell, we bought it.
Beer cans destroying a car.
It belonged to such an impure old Muslim nasty camel jockey that the flames didn't even want to touch it. That's what happened. Because it was American flames, God damn it, and they're not going to have anything to do with a damn old Muslim passport, I'll tell you.
That's
And
I
he's
was
been
on an
through his-
aircraft carrier, and our jets would blast steel plates with their afterburners, 20-foot long flame, and never even warp it. So
Well, absolutely. And that's the whole point. Now everybody sees it for the farce it was, which was another reason they probably did the September 10th PSYOP there just before 9/11.
Well, yeah,
But
just before 9/11. That's what I've been
Yeah.
saying. That it's been a while since then, but it's like right now everybody's really starting to, poke all the holes into it, the story, and more and more stuff has been coming out the last couple of years, and it's like, oh, here we go with 9/10 now, right? Everybody will be so tired of hearing about that by the next day nobody's gonna care about 9/11.
yeah, Netflix
What?
is on it. Netflix is on it. They my wife just pulled up something last night. She's not in any of this, but she just happened to want to watch the movie about the way that dude was treated back in 03, I believe it was, all the way up to 14. Never was charged with a crime, but spent 14 years in prison. Anyway, they're bringing up shit like that to distract, of course.
Well, yeah. Well, and then it's just like the obvious, just in the same vein of, it's like the obvious, they have that rally or whatever. And then his wife's like, and I'm talking about what just happened on September 10th. His wife's like, and I forgive that young man with no tears, totally fake, right? I forgive that young man for what he did. And it's like, dude, there's no evidence that he did anything. You have not presented one piece of evidence that this kid did anything. The
They
same
want to sell the
security
narrative
camera.
of single shooter.
Right.
They
The
don't-
same
they-
camera.
This is a dog case for a prosecution. All
Yeah,
they
it's
have
not
to do
good.
is show reasonable doubt. And there's all kinds of reasonable doubt. Why didn't he cast the shadow, but everything else did when he was running across the roof? Where's the rifle as he's running across the roof? How do you take apart a fucking gun that requires a screwdriver, disassemble it and run off the roof that quick, and then later, after leaving the screwdriver, have some method of putting it back together in the area where it's found? I mean, this is just nonsense. Anybody that believes this story even for a second, it doesn't have brains
I have no clue, but I personally think he's going to walk. I don't think anything's going to come.
I don't think he exists as anything but a character
Well,
in
yeah,
the
basically.
media and on paper. I'm serious. I don't. After seeing how they do things and knowing, how the depths that these people will go to. That's why there was no freaking
Timothy
crime scene
McVeigh.
tape. Yeah, there was
Right?
no crime scene tape. There was no CSI. There was nothing. Right. That would be standard. There's no autopsy. There's no nothing. Right. So what does that lead you to believe? It didn't happen. Right.
They're actively destroying the crime scene as we speak, day after day.
Right. And not only that, but so that leads me to believe that all of these people are central casting.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Just like they tell you all the time. And so let me get through a little bit of this real quick. It says, so we can see if we can figure out about Booz Allen, the specific role. D-class drops reveal the pivot from chemicals to code, DARPA's 2011, whatever that is, SMISC program, 42 million to map memes on Twitter. Look at that. Even memes are a part of the MK Ultra 2.0, which of course they would be. Flag propaganda. And see, that's how they're using for all of you that are interested in law. You guys keep reposting memes that are not actually in any court cases. And I warn the Jurist Society all the time about that. I even show them examples. But I still see it all the time. I see it all over my Facebook, and it's a pet peeve of mine. It's like, just take a little bit of time. You go to Harvard Case Law Access Project, and you can access any case. And you do a Control F on your laptop, or you do find in page on your phone, and you search for the sentence you're trying to say is in the case. If it doesn't show up, it's from the intelligence agency. It's part of a PSYOP to make you look stupid. That's what they're doing. Okay. So map memes. It's a meme war, right? So flag propaganda and counter with PSYOPs. By 2020, it's algorithmic: predict, profile, and provoke. And they got a bunch of data during that whole period. So it says privatization was the Phoenix Rise. Enter in QTEL, CIA's 1999 venture arm. Q for James Bond, Gadgeteer. It seeded Palantir, 2003. born from PayPal fraud tech to hunt terror patterns. And you look who's behind everything, even right now, the PayPal mafia, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, all the same players. And so when they founded the first online payment system, PayPal, or the big commercial one, they used that to pilot and test CIA, intelligence tech on pattern recognition to profile people as radicals, as extremists. That's what that means right there. And that was the purpose behind PayPal. You see how like the Epstein, the PayPal, and all of this is just one big network of the same people, the same Satanists trying to do the same thing, right? Which is the New World Order. Peter Thiel's brainchild, Palantir's Gotham, integrates data for predictive policing. Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't mention that. I've shown that before, actually. Yeah, not just Gideon, but Gotham is also like Batman, is AI policing, predictive policing.
PayPal.
Now,
sorry.
What'd you say?
I was just going to say PayPal started as X.com too. Did you know that?
Yeah, because Elon Musk stole it, and then he likes one of his kids' name is X.
Everything he does is X. There's something behind that too that I'm still curious about.
Well, we can probably rest assured that it's dark. Remember, he's dark MAGA, and he and his mom make no pretenses about who they serve.
She is a witch.
That's what I'm saying.
Literal witch.
Yeah. Probably hangs out with that Michelle Laney and Marina Abramovic over there in California. But okay, so financiers, black budgets with Bank of International Settlements echo. So that's how the oligarchs still fund. The banking oligarchs are funding all of this. UN counter-terror grants, and that's another thing. The whole Promise software scandal, what that uncovered was a huge drug cartel linking the Clintons and Mena, Arkansas, the Bush family, everybody to this big, massive drug running ring, right? But the purpose wasn't just the drug running and the societal degradation that came from it. It's the drug running that funded the black ops. That's why they started. And it's always been the big drug cartels, because even behind the East India Trading Company that became our government, right, was the opium wars and the opium that they got from China. That's what it was. They were big drug runners. That's all they ever have been. And look at Afghanistan, 2001 or 2003. Go over there, immediately take over the poppy fields. Boom. What happens over here in the United States simultaneously? There is an epidemic of painkiller abuse all across the country that puts a whole generation on heroin. Bam, immediately. I bet a lot of you didn't make that connection between the war in Afghanistan and the opioid epidemic here in the United States. Well, I know you guys probably did on panel. Actually, I take that back. Probably a lot of people have made that connection, but it's just crazy. The drug running, that's what it was all about. It's about funding these black budgets. Now, what are the black budgets? For mind control.
Look at Air America. Look at Air America in Vietnam. It's the same fucking thing.
Yep, exactly.
Well, look what's going on now. They're bombing Venezuelan cartels, they say. But anyway.
Yeah, I know. And
Air America was like the Barry Seal of the early 70s and late 60s.
And now, it's the cartel, that Venezuelan thing. Yeah, there's going to be some angle where they're going to try to either implement AI predictive policing, digital IDs, or both in the name of stopping either immigration, drug trafficking, or both. I think that's what they're setting the stage for. I think that was one of the main reasons. So you got to remember, Gideon allowed them to plant terror cells all over the world under the guise of stay behind armies to fight communism if it spread, right? But really, they were terror cells controlled by the intelligence agency. And now look at who came in the last 5 years through the southern border. Military-aged males from all these different countries throughout Latin America and Asia, and so all the places where they set up these private mercenary networks of radicalized people. That's what they are. They brought them into the country.
A UN army, yeah.
Now they're going to hold us hostage, and they're going to be like, hey, you either take this digital ID and we'll get these people out of here, or we're going to activate them. You know what I mean? It's kind of the thing I see coming up next. If people resist the digital ID, they're just going to try to, which, you know what? Hey, if it comes down to it, then let's do it. Let's get it. You know what I mean? Whatever's got to happen sooner or later, right? So
I think at some point, like just whenever you go to renew, they're just going to automatically make it. Like I don't foresee. Even if
They're
you
going to need
refuse,
your
even if you refuse it, because I've noticed even so, I got an iPhone, whatever, but like I've noticed now that they're trying to do it to where you can put your passport, your ID, everything into your Apple Wallet or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
pretty much, just get people do it. I've already seen people do it. I'm a holdout. I mean, I'm never gonna do it, but if it just ends up putting all my crap on there, what am I gonna do about it? Get rid of the phone, basically.
That's what they need to do. Just like China's WeChat is the only way that their AI governance works over there is to have the bank account, social media, to have everything hooked into one app that's regulated and governed by AI. And then so for societal infractions, your social credit score drops, right? And this is all, and realize how this is the ultimate evolution of the feudalism that William the Conqueror set up in 1066, right? It's complete administration of the entire nation. All the citizens are property and part of a membership corporation where daddy government or daddy corporation gets to decide what's best for the corporation. And he can take from you to give to this individual if it's for the good of the corporation, or he can go send you to die if it's for the good of the corporation, or whatever he wants to do. And he can also tell you how to behave, how to use the property that is now property of the corporation under administration, and that would be your body. So your social credit score drops, and then automatically you get a fine immediately taken out of your bank account by the AI governance, and there's no hearing. There's no chance to challenge jurisdiction or say, hey, I'm not under administration. I'm not in a trust indenture. Your presumptions, there's no opportunity to rebut presumptions. And that's why they want AI governance set up so bad. There will be no opportunity to rebut presumptions and stand on your lawful status. If you accept, and you'll sacrifice, like me, I filed my paperwork. If I got a digital ID, I would sacrifice that. The reason I think they'll need consent, and that's why they're working so hard to get people to voluntarily accept the digital ID, is because it's a whole new contract than the driver's license situation that they're using as ID. This ID is going to be a legal entity all its own, right? And it's going to be part of the new world beast system, and they need you to voluntarily go get it. Now, over in England, they're trying to coerce people, but they're not forcing them. Notice that. Yeah, you don't have to get one, but you won't be able to work within a year. And see, there you go. That's how I tell you dependency causes servility to the corporate state, because now that they've taken all of the businesses and they have all the resources, how are you going to live? How are you going to make a living? If you can't go work for one of their corporations, what sort of skills do you have? Do you have somewhere where you can go hunt, fish, live off the grid? Because that's what you'll have to do. Well, maybe not here in the United States because we're still armed, but that's what they're going to have to do over in England if they're unable to mount a resistance to this. And that's the point. They're not forcing you to do it technically, but you are dependent on them to live, and without them you wouldn't be able to live. So you have to subject yourself to their will. That's the principle of law. That's how that works. It's how you leave law and come under administration. Right? So I'm not going to say dark times, actually, because I feel like more people are waking up now than ever before in history, at least that I could read. No, I take that back. One other time has an awakening happen like this. And the planets were in the same alignments and everything. And that was in the period of time, like the 30 or 40 years leading up to the American Revolutionary War, or the first American Civil War, however you want to look at it. But it's what the Revolutionary War was. So Patrick Henry wrote about it quite extensively, about the awakening that was going on throughout the colonies and how people were basically casting off the chains of so the whole give me liberty or give me death speech was from Patrick Henry watched a pastor get beat to death because he didn't get a license to preach. And that's the type of stuff that was going on. Like the tyranny had gotten, and that's why Thomas Jefferson said, subjecting us to foreign unwarrantable foreign jurisdictions. He's talking about Roman civil law, the very thing they're doing to us now. And so they call that period of time the Great Awakening. Leading up to that, there's a big spiritual revival amongst the colonists, and they returned back to the original law, and that led to the creation of this country. And then, of course, Washington and gang, Hamilton, and all the banker agents that were in the government quickly subverted our original framework with the Constitution. See, our original Constitution is the Articles of Confederation, and they could have never set the system up under the Articles of Confederation. It was too good. It was too airtight for individual liberty. All of the states are sovereign nations in a loose friendship with one another for mutual economic prosperity. But even still, like Michigan went to war with Ohio at one point in time.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. That's very,
Over-
you'd never
over
see
Toledo. It was over
over
Toledo.
Toledo.
You ever see that?
you know-
You know, if you look at the southern border of Michigan, it goes along in a line that juts up a little bit and then goes over, so that Ohio can include Toledo.
They kicked our asses in that one. That's true. Ohio got us. But, the point is Michigan is supposed to have its own military. Ohio is supposed to have its own military. And the government is supposed to be the servant of the people. And military is not standing. There's like a small militia kept on reserve. You know what I mean? But not an entire standing army. You're not, no way are you supposed to do that. Either state or federal. That's not a thing. So that's why when there was a war, then you had to raise the armies. The initial little enclave of military that was, set aside just in case, would then go out and expand itself through conscription to be able to mount a war or mount a defense or an offense or whatever the case may be. So, but the Articles of, or the Constitution, primarily what it did was it created a federal judiciary, right? So the Constitution replaced the Articles of Confederation, left a bunch of back doors open in it for the Bar Association to come in and take over the judicial branch of government. Thomas Jefferson warned against this. He said, the germ of dissolution is seated within this infernal document. He said, the judicial branch of government will work like gravity by night and by day to usurp the sovereignty of the states. And that's exactly what happened. And he was talking about the federal judiciary. You know why? Because before that, there was no federal judiciary, right? There was just the state courts, all common law courts. Well, the federal judiciary is technically an international court. And what they were charged with via the, the Judicial Act of 1794, the Supreme Court was created and told to interpret the Constitution, which is insane. And they did that on purpose so the Bar Association could come in and give the air of validity to their unlawful bullshit, saying, well, it may be against the law, but the Supreme Court said it was constitutional. Like, that doesn't matter. Any law repugnant to the Constitution is null and void, right? So, and it's not constitutional because the Constitution was made under common law. But the Constitution is a devious document that through the Commerce Clause of Article 1 and the creation of the federal judiciary have allowed the usurpation of the sovereignty of the states, just like because contracts, no state shall impair the performance of the obligation of contracts. And that's, of course, part of common law. But at the same time, that opened the door for them to use contracts to usurp your sovereignty and to not have any remedy for it, essentially, if they can prove that it was a valid contract. Now they've eliminated your ability to challenge it at law by locking you in a trust so completely that they've pretty much abolished the courts of law. The only court of record in the entire country is the Federal Court of Claims now, which again is that's why we teach in the Juris Society. We bring them to our own court, which you absolutely have the power to do. So that's a conversation for another time. You bring them to law. So, the very first thing, just real quick, and I'll let you guys, the very first thing that George Washington did, because he was not our first president at all. We had I think 8 or 9 presidents under the Articles of Confederation.
Some of them were black too, right?
Allegedly, yeah. And I wouldn't doubt it, honestly. We've been lied to so much. But the very first thing George Washington did, well, the Jacobins, who had already infiltrated the Illuminati, which had already infiltrated our republic, had went through and started radicalizing people, and they did exactly what they're doing today. And they used some radicalized, disgruntled Revolutionary War veteran named Daniel Shea, right? Encouraged him to rise up against the unlawful taxes that the federal government immediately started imposing under the Constitution. And George Washington took this as an opportunity to exercise his muscle as the president under the Constitution and took the Continental Army down and squashed them. right? And all they were doing was protesting. These guys had just fought a war to get out from under the yoke of tyranny and taxation, and then immediately started getting presented with it again. And all they were doing was like, hey, this isn't what I fought for. And George Washington came down and shut the fuck up. And, with the boot on the face. So there you go. Land of the free, right? Fuck these people. So there are solutions, though. And once you know what they're doing, you know what the solutions are, because contrary to popular belief, they cannot violate the law when you know the law, and you can use the law against them if you know how. So that's the most important thing I want to leave you guys with. Do you guys want to say anything before I get off here? Because I got to put the little one to bed.
No, I ain't got a thing.
Hey, Ryan, what did you say was the only court of record?
Federal Court of Claims.
Federal Court of Claims?
Yeah, aside from our own court that we make, but
I'm sorry, where is that?
it's in DC.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All the rest of these.
Also, Ryan, I emailed you earlier today. I'm not sure if you saw it.
Probably not yet. I haven't checked my email in a while. I've been setting this up and
doing
a bunch of other stuff, but I would check it.
I appreciate it.
Just going to say good night, all. Yeah, appreciate having me on, Ryan, even though I didn't contribute much tonight, but good listening to you. It's good information.
No, I always love having you guys on, man. And it's like I said, anytime cut me off if I'm in the middle of talking, because I'm just keeping the show going. Dead air is bad and there's a lot to explain. But if you got something to say, cut me off and feel free to go ahead and share, So I want everybody to know, if you come on the show, don't be afraid to hey, I got something to say. Yeah, go ahead. I'm all for it. Yeah. I just never know when that moment is, and I want to keep the flow going. So, you gotta string these events together for people in such a way that they can actually see, holy shit, yeah, this has been going on for a long time. Devil is real and is really trying to take over the world. So yeah, that's what's happening. So, well, with that, I appreciate everybody. Facebook, YouTube, Rumble. You guys have an excellent evening. A couple shout outs. We got my dad's channel, Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind. It's an excellent channel. He's been a little under the weather lately, but I'm sure he'll be straightening again soon. Definitely check out some. Yeah, you will. Okay. I don't know. I'm going to say it's probably Ty. Yeah, because Ty's got that crappy service down there, so it's all good. But yeah, Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind on YouTube, or SSUM369 on Rumble. Check him out. And then our first guest tonight, which was what was it? I'm sorry. Is it Benjamin? Is he still with us? No, I think he took off. It was Benjamin. And definitely check out.
Who's doing
it? I think it's. Yeah, his keeps getting unmuted for some. I don't think he's doing it at all. He's got a black screen. He's having some issues with this connection. I know he lives the dream we all want to, and he's kind of in a secluded area. So I can't even be mad at him. I'm glad he could get enough service to join us a little bit, So
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. You've got an awful humming going on.
Yeah, I was trying to get those damn lights working. I'm trying to get this pump over here so my wife can take a shower. We don't have any plumbing or anything right now, and these lights are fucking with me. And I had to get away from the generator. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good, man. It's all good. Well, with that, yeah, check out my dad's channel, and I guess the other guy left. I was going to let him plug his Facebook page again, but I can't remember what it was. I just met him.
I understand the thing you're saying, Ryan.
Oh, all right. There we go. Okay. Anyway, so check out my dad's channel, and I was going to let the other guy plug his channel, or plug his page, but he took off. So, I guess that is what it is. Anyways, wow. All right. We got to put you backstage. You have a good night, Ty, and the rest of the panel. Sorry I had to put you backstage, but that was a little much. And to the rest of you, have an excellent evening. I'll see you within a couple days. Do you know when you're going to stream next, Dad?
Whenever it's at the whim of this falling apart body thing of mine going on here. We'll see, because I got up today and I was feeling good. Everything was great. And then all of a sudden it just started kicking in on me. And I'm like, son of a bitch, what did I do? How did I do that? So it's just I'm at least learning how to manage it. That's what's important. So we get that
Hopefully,
managed. I go back to the chiropractor again tomorrow because when I broke my ankle back in '85, when it grew back, when it healed back, I don't have a normal gait. So like my one shoe wears more than the other shoe does. It's noticeable on the heels of my shoes. So I know that's doing some kind of a tilt to my pelvis. And everything indicates that this is like right along the sciatic nerve. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but it can't go on forever. That's all. That just.
Have you tried using one of those like strap-on back braces? I know it doesn't fix the problem or anything, but it does give a little relief.
Yeah, I mean, I've given it consideration. I haven't tried it yet, but it's like there's no rhyme or reason as to why it comes and goes that I can figure out. It's so weird.
They're pretty cheap. I think you can pick one up for like $25 or something, but it's just a Velcro thing you wrap around. Yeah, it gives you a relief. Like I said, it doesn't fix the problem, but if you're just like in a little bit of pain, it definitely helps out. I've used one in the past.
Well, let me tell you something about these fucking devices, man. They are listening because at no time ever have I Googled anything about this. Nothing, right?
Yeah.
I deduced it, merely from what I know and working that out like that to where I know that it's got to be the sciatic nerve. All right. So the next thing I know, all across Facebook, I'm getting these fucking ads for Social Security disability benefits for sciatica. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me here? And all these, like every third ad is something about it. And then on YouTube, I'm getting recommended videos on how to relieve your back from sciatic nerve pain. And it was shit that I'd already figured out on my own anyways through my experimentation of contortions. But it's like really weird why all of a sudden I'm getting all this bullshit. I haven't even looked for anything. I haven't even used it as a search query. And here it is. I mean, what the fuck? These things are listening to you all the time.
That's pretty much what we've been talking about for the last hour for sure. They definitely are. We see all the documents, but Rocky Shepherd sent a $10 super sticker, man. So much appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Dad, definitely hope you feel better. I hope everybody checks out his channel, Sovereign Soul Unchained Mind, again, when they're able to, or SSUM369 on Rumble. He's got some good content, good guests. Chad's up there usually a lot. And with that, to the jurists that are here in backstage, and to Chad, my dad, Mojo, Timothy, I will see you guys very soon. Well, I'll see you guys Friday on the Jurist Society. I'm probably going to do another public stream before that. So I'll see you guys Friday. You guys have an excellent night. See you later.